Chapter 201, Under Castle Holiday. Early the next morning, Ryan was woken up by a sudden knock on the door. "Okay, please wait, let me clean up and come out immediately." Ryan shouted and took care of himself with magic, and opened the door. "Hermione, why did you get up so early?" "It's only 6:30 in the morning." Lane looked at Hermione standing at the door a little puzzled. "Because I have something to ask you to talk about. If it wasn't too tired last night, the actually yesterday should have told you." After that, Hermione took Ryan to the small living room and sat down, then pointed out and pulled out the wand. "Read close earplugs and listen." "What are you doing?" "Because I found something that is not suitable for others to hear. I use this magic to prevent someone from eavesdropping." Then Hermione stared at Ryan seriously. "I think I know which world we are in now. This is the fairy tale world of Beauty and the Beast. I just saw this cartoon on the Christmas of the first grade. This world is almost the same as the animation. My only strange thing is, why is Belle here looking like me?" Ryan was startled when he spoke with Hermione about the Beast of Beauty, thinking he was a traverser in front of him. After all, the movie version and the original text in green fairy tales are far from each other, and most people can't see the connection between yesterday's lessons. But when she said that watching the cartoon found all this, he only remembered that the original live-action movie was Disney's remake of the 91-year-old cartoon, and the content in it was basically the same. After all, something in Harry Potter's world is the same as Ryan's original world, just like Disney's 91-year animated movie. Knowing where this is now is a good thing. This is equivalent to knowing the future of this world. What a bad thing we can avoid when we are dizzy. As for the protagonist in the story, does it look like that? There is nothing strange about meeting people who look like yourself in many worlds. By the way, what do you think we should do next? After all, there are now two people. Ryan wants to know what Hermione had at this time. "I think it's a waste to find a place to hide for 7 days and wait to go home. Since we already know where it is, we feel that we can learn a lot in this world." Without saying anything else, "We can rely on one person alone. The power of the whole castle has turned the whole castle upside down. This world should also have a lot of interesting magical knowledge. And I think this Beast's castle may collect some of these things. And speaking of which, Hermione is a bit sorry. And I also want to experience this fairy tale in person." Hermione touched the meteorite talisman hanging around her neck and lowered her head to say, "What's so embarrassing? In fact, I'm just as curious about this world." Ryan's voice just fell, and the door knocked again. "Hello, Miss Belle, what's the matter with you?" Hermione got up from the seat and opened the door, and found Belle standing anxiously outside the door. "Is the wounded's injury getting worse?" "No. Yesterday, I obviously cleared the wound well. It should be restored this morning." Ryan also came out at this time and was puzzled after seeing Belle's anxious expression. Said, "No, it's not this," Belle said. "There are other problems here. I think maybe only your wizard can solve it by magic." "Really? Then we have to look at it first. After all, we are just wizard apprentices, which may not be as powerful as you think." "You know, magic is not omnipotent," Lane replied seriously. After talking, the two followed Belle to the West Tower. On the way, Belle told Ryan and Hermione that everyone in the castle was cursed. Once that magical rose completely withered, these servants will become furniture forever, and the beast will also completely lose the true beast of the rational head. "So I hope you can save them." "Let's try our best," Hermione said. "A wizard who can curse a castle into what it is now is far stronger than us. We really don't have much confidence in lifting the curse on the castle." The furniture in the castle said there are other ways to solve the curse, so you don't need to be so nervous. "Well, here we are." They now came to the room last night. When they opened the door, they found that the sun was flooding the room. The red velvet tent beside the bed has been pulled apart, and the beast looks very energetic, lying on the bed half-baked in the sun by the feather pillow. Hearing the sound when the door opened, the beast turned his furry brain with two horns to the place where the door opened, and after seeing clearly who was coming in, he rolled over and closed his eyes. "Here, he's just a little bit shy. As long as he doesn't snarl at you, it means he has accepted you," Belle explained a little embarrassedly when he saw this scene. "It's okay," Ryan shouted deliberately after shaking his hand. www.mplnovel.com. "I'm using some magic to check this rose, but please be assured that even if you can't check the problem, it won't damage it." Sure enough, to hear about the baby rose, the beast sat up from the bed all at once. "Don't touch my baby rose." Okay, I won't touch it." Ryan raised his hands in front of Hermione. "But I think I can check your body for you. Maybe I can see something." "As long as you don't touch the roses, but I think you may just be in vain." After talking about the beast half lying on the bed, he closed his eyes and nourished himself. After all, he lost too much blood in the ice and snow yesterday. Even if he stopped bleeding in time. Looking at Belle, who was nervously looking at them, Hermione stepped forward and said, "You can do what you want, such as chatting with the gentleman on the bed. Don't care about us." After all, even the simplest magic analysis takes a lot of time, and this time will be boring. Belle quickly sat down by the beast's bed and began to recite some classic passages for him, while Ryan looked at a group of moving furniture and said, "Well, who of you would like to be a volunteer for us to check?" "Young man, let me do it. At least I hope you can get my son out of this situation. Mrs. Teapot jumped from the trolley into lane. Poor parents in the world, thinking of Mrs. Ryan bowing his opponent's teapot wife comfortingly. Relax, this magic is very safe, nothing will happen. After seeing the candlestick housekeeper bring Hermione with paper and pen, Ryan raised his wand and said, Hermione, you will record the runes in the air for a while. He finished drawing a golden rune Anzura in the air to his wife. Then read in ancient Viking language, Wisdom Exploration. Chapter 202, Magic Research. With a recitation of Ryan's mantra, Rooney Runfu Culture made a handful of gold powder covering the teapot wife. After touching the teapot wife, these gold powders began to flow slowly on its surface. Finally, a golden rune of different sizes was projected in the air. But what surprised him most was that in addition to these runes, a chain of golden runes connected to the rose flower placed in the glass cover. Hermione, start recording now. After Ryan waved his wand, these runes floated in the air to form a peculiar pattern. As Shasha's transcript stopped, Hermione put down her quill. Okay, I've taken the whole picture down. Ryan put down his wand, and the golden characters in the air disappeared. The magic needed to maintain this is quite large. Fortunately, you move faster, otherwise I can't really hold it. Well, let me see. Ryan took over Hermione and handed over what he just recorded and began to detail studying. Hermione also got together. The surrounding furniture was breathless, as if waiting for the sentence of fate. After finally calculating a dozen manuscripts, Ryan shook his head bitterly. Can't this problem be solved? Hermione asked when Ryan's face suddenly became ugly. Although my knowledge may be more among the students, there is still a small distance compared to the truly powerful wizard. The magic inside is not only a metamorphosis, but also contains the power of life and nature. The most exquisite among them, the structure, is to finally use curse technique to combine these forces and maintain the balance between them, and then concentrate all the power on the rose. Ryan pointed to the rose in the glass cover. But now the problem is that there is a lack of systematic learning of curses in our knowledge. That is the content of the Hogwarts Black Magic Defense Newt Improvement class. All the books that explain the curse magic in detail are in the forbidden area. I haven't seen one at all, so I don't know what to do. Listening to Ryan's frustration, Hermione put her hand on Ryan's shoulder and gently patted it a few times to express her comfort. What Ryan did not say was that the ancient Viking wizards advocated going straight like warriors, so there is basically not much related to cursing and dispelling in the inheritance. Another kind of natural magic simply cannot have such content that they regard as evil. As for Moshan Dozu, such content is indeed a lot, but it is mainly aimed at the Middle-earth Taoism, and it has not much effect on this Western witchcraft. While Leafa can indeed break the law, but the problem is that a group of ordinary people are now cursed, and they can't bear the excessive violent energy of Leafa. If you cast it forcibly, it's easy to curse the person without it. That is to say, all the knowledge that Ryan has now cannot safely solve the curse of these people. This conclusion makes him feel a bit depressed. After all, he has experienced so many adventures and gained so much power, but still encounters this situation helpless. Oh, boy, you shouldn't worry about this. Our own mistakes will have to bear the consequences. Well, would you like a cup of hot tea? After talking about it, Mrs. Teapot poured 2 cups of tea before them. Thanks. Ryan took the teacup and continued. Although it is impossible to lift the curse on you from the root, I think I should be able to come up with a way to make you a little more comfortable in a short time. After all, the curse will make you more and more stiff, and it will be uncomfortable. Really? Thank you so much. The candlestick butler jumped up and bowed gracefully to Ryan. Right. Do you need any help? Sufficient paper, pens, ink. There is also a large enough room for experimentation. Well, I know a good place. The alarm clock manager clumsily climbed up the table and said, Come with me. Under the leadership of the alarm clock manager, Ryan and they came to the castle library. God, so many books. Although there aren't as many books in the Hogwarts library, it's already a rich collection for a private library. After opening the door, Hermione looked at the room full of books, exclaimed, biography, literature, adventure notes, and some reference books. But there is no magic book that works for us. Ryan came to this conclusion after turning around. Okay, this is nothing. Let's start work. I think this should be fine. More than an hour later, with the help of Hermione, Ryan synthesized the power of life and nature he mastered and finally came up with a cracking spell. This curse does not touch the curse itself. After all, Ryan and Hermione both know that the ending of the fairy tale is not bad, and they worry that messing around may lead to unpredictable consequences. So in this magic, they simply use the power of nature and life to make these people who are cursed into furniture can get more life force, and build a simple barrier between them and the curse to resist. Let them gradually become the curse of the dead. We really succeeded. While Ryan and Hermione were high-fiving, the door was pushed open with a sudden, a rough voice came in. This should be the voice of the beast. Come on, you can find a few books here first and see. What's wrong with you? You're reading www.uukanzu.com. It's incredible. Belle's answer came across several bookshelves. Okay, We should find someone to try our spell. Hermione packed up the manuscripts on the table and said to Ryan, who was lying there studying, I know that these runes can develop a lot of things, and I was addicted to it just now. But to help these cursed people is something we have promised others, so we have to finish this matter and study it again. Yes, you're right. It's because I didn't control myself. Ryan stood up from the table and worked with Hermione to organize the paper on the table. It's true that he is not so addicted to learning at ordinary times, but today he was hit by this curse and was a bit horny. So, with Hermione's reminder, he quickly sobered up. When they were ready to walk to the front of the library, they saw Belle looking at the bookshelf with her mouth in surprise. What's wrong with you, Miss Belle? Hermione stepped forward and asked. Oh, just call me Belle. I was just a little sick because I was happy. After all, I like reading, but I didn't expect there are so many books in the library that I haven't read. After listening to this answer, Ryan's mouth slightly raised an urge to vomit. Even if there are so many worlds apart, the character set represented by this face is like reading. Hermione glared at him. When he saw Ryan's expression, he knew he was wrong, so he hurriedly pretended to look elsewhere. Originally, Ryan wanted to wait for them to finish talking and then go out to help those furniture. As a result, the two of them found a common language because of those who love reading. No way, Ryan could only greet them, and then went to find the furniture alone. Chapter 203, Accidentally Found. Are you the wizard who said we can alleviate our pain? Ryan was looking for the furniture in a hallway decorated with paintings and sculptures everywhere. A female voice suddenly came from above. Well, if there is no other wizard in the castle, it should be me, Ryan answered as he looked up and found a white feather duster flying like a bird in the air. It seems that the cursed witch is quite creative. At least he can't think of this aspect of the brain hole that turns feather dusters into birds. Thinking of here, Ryan hurriedly pulled back his own deviation, and then said, in fact, we have just researched the mitigation magic, but now we need someone to help try the effect. Then please experiment on me. The feather duster flew to Ryan in front of him. I feel that I am getting more and more stiff, and I feel that I am about to fall from the sky. Okay, unfortunately this magic is not mature. I hope you can forgive me. After that, Ryan took out his wand and drew silver runic runes in the air, using ancient UIs before the runes dissipated the mantra in Beijing chants. The curse is relieved. As the last syllable fell, the rune culture in the air became a silver light spot and fell into the feather duster in front of it. The 35 excess feather flicked and fell to the ground with a snap. My curse should be okay. Ryan thought that Khan was gone. Fortunately, at this time, the feather duster fluttered again, and it looked more flexible than before. Ah, I can feel a lot lighter on the body. Thank you very much. Wait a minute, I'll call all your companions. Feathered and flew down the corridor. Soon, a lot of furniture gathered in the hallway, and the chaotic situation caused Ryan to be confused. Fortunately, the candlestick butler was very prestigious. He took Ryan to the hall, and then put all the furniture in line to receive Ryan's treatment one by one. After alleviating the curse on 7 or 8 pieces of furniture, Hermione walked upstairs and joined the busy work. I think you have a good conversation with Belle. How did you get here? Ryan asked curiously. I don't think you might be too busy and want to help you. Besides, Belle is going to find the beast. Do I always have to give them some private space? It was not until the sun went down that the curse magic was released to the hundreds of furniture in the castle. When everything was over, Ryan found that he and Hermione had dumb throats. It's a little sorry, so please use some of our prepared throat drink first. After the magic, Ryan and they came to the restaurant. They came early, and there was no one at the table. As soon as he sat down at the table, the candlestick housekeeper gave a cup of mint tea. While drinking tea, Belle and the beast discussed the contents of the book and entered the restaurant. Oh, 2 new guests. It's a bit rude not to thank you personally before. Well, let's have dinner now. After the beast sat on his throne and looked at them. When he turned his gaze to Hermione's face, he was a little surprised. After all, he hadn't looked at Ryan carefully before. So at this time, I was surprised when I saw a girl who looked like Belle. If you didn't know that you were from afar, I thought she was Belle's sister. After the beast laughed, the atmosphere at the table was alive. Actually, we are quite like sisters, except for their looks. At least they are almost identical in the point of love reading, Belle said with raised eyebrows. Ryan felt that this sentence made sense, especially when he was sitting next to a book while eating to see that the two people were really similar. It felt like the will of the big universe constituted this coincidence. Of course, the beast's face was buried in the soup bowl on the dining table, and half of the face was bushed. It was really not elegant, but I have to admit that the servants in this castle did not lose the cooking elves in Hogwarts. After returning to the room, Ryan and the two studied the wonderful runes for a while and went to bed. The next day, the man was woken up by Hermione knocking on the door again in the morning. What's the matter this time? If I do this every day, I will definitely be nervous. Ryan quickly packed and opened the door, only to find Hermione standing outside, but her face was full of panic. People feel like crying in the next moment. What happened? You seem to be in a bad mood. After finishing, Ryan walked to the living room table, took a tea set from the colorful porcelain plate on the table, then picked up the teapot and poured a cup of black tea. Opposite the table, reached out and signaled Hermione to sit down. "Don't be nervous, drink some tea and talk slowly." After sitting down, Hermione held a teacup in her hands with her hands and eased her emotions. Then she shook her voice slightly and said, "This morning I suddenly discovered that I could manipulate my own blood, and then a lot of blood magic poured into my brain." Related knowledge. Am I possessed by the of blood in that temple? Having said that, she was worried that Ryan would not believe that she had bitten a wound on her finger. www.mplnovel.com. Sure enough, a drop of blood was suspended in the air, and then wriggled around her finger. "Look, that's it. I don't need any magic, I can direct my blood with my heart." It seems that this is the gift that the souls killed by the blood gave them at the end, thinking that Ryan also made a mouth on his finger. Sure enough, after a drop of blood rolled out, Ryan found that he had a lot of blood-related magic in his mind. Soon, Ryan could also make this drop of blood circle around his fingers. "What is going on?" Hermione asked, looking at the scene with wide eyes in surprise. "This is a gift of magic, a gift that can be hidden in the bloodline." After finishing, Ryan roughly explained the love and hatred between the victims in the temple and the blood god, and he himself for them the process of obtaining gifts after revenge. Finally, he concluded, the 2 drops of blood actually only record a part of the knowledge related to the blood god, and what is really valuable is the power that the hundreds of thousands of liberated souls have been given to us by magic. Because it is a person related to the blood god, so this power is naturally related to the control of blood, so that we have a kind of magical ability, just like the ability of many magical animals. The most powerful aspect of this gift is that the overall strength of the donor has exceeded a certain upper limit. So this power is branded in our blood and can be passed on from generation to generation with the power of the blood. "Wait, you said that it's passed on from generation to generation?" Hermione reacted suddenly. "How does this resemble that of a pureblood wizard?" Chapter 204, Pureblood History and Forgotten Loot. Hermione seemed to think of something because of the gift, opened her eyes and looked at Ryan in disbelief. 35XS Lane nodded solemnly. "Your guess may be true. Our acceptance of this gift should actually be very similar to those of the ancestors of the pureblood family who gained a unique strength and became the beginning of a pureblood wizard. If it is explained scientifically, it is a kind of directed gene variation." Speaking of this, Ryan recalled the content of Slytherin's human transformation in his secret room, paused and said, "Of course not all pureblood families have obtained this power by signing a contract with a powerful life. Some powerful wizards have also kept their power in their blood through their research, which will be passed on from generation to generation. After having this kind of power inherited by blood, the ancestors of these pureblood wizard families gained an unprecedented advantage. After all, the wizards were also in the groping period for the application of magic power. The power of blood lineage can guarantee the entire family will not sever inheritance for various reasons. After establishing their superiority, they naturally acquired more resources. The more resources, the greater the superiority. In this virtuous circle, the family power also expanded like a snowball, and finally formed the pure rule of the British wizarding world today. Blood family. They are called pureblood because in their early years, in order to preserve the power in their blood, they had to adopt the method of marriage by close relatives. 35XS. However, as time goes on, even the power of the blood of close relatives will gradually fade. Your parents are dentists, so you should know that the harm of such close marriages is very great. So a large number of pureblood families have to choose other pureblood and even hemp wizards in to marry. But because they have accumulated enough advantages before, even if the power in the bloodline completely disappears, they will not jeopardize their dominance. There are naturally immortal families, but they have slowly disappeared into the long river of history. So much so that I now know that only 2 families can inherit the power of their ancestors in the blood. Wait. The legendary mysterious man is a born snakehead. Shouldn't their family be one of the families that inherits the power of the bloodline? Hermione asked his question after listening to Ryan's explanation. "You're right. I turned over the old newspapers in the school library and found that the Gunter family is a descendant of Slytherin. It's just that from the newspapers 100 years ago, the family was irritable and mentally ill due to the close marriage and the profligate proficiency, until the family disappeared completely 50 years ago. The last member was imprisoned in Azkaban for killing moles, and finally died there. And the other is our principal Dumbledore, the ancestral phoenix. Fortunately, their family signed a long-term contract with the longevity species, so there is no need to get close relatives like the Gant family. It turns out that it is 35XS. Hermione nodded, then picked up the teacup and started drinking tea quietly. It was at this time that Ryan thought that in addition to these 2 drops of blood, he also obtained something from the pyramid as a spoils. It's just that he has been so busy after coming to this world that he has always ignored the existence of this loot. Hermione was sipping hot tea in a small sip, and suddenly heard the sound. She looked around and saw Ryan removed a dirty animal skin pocket from her belt and placed it on the table. "What's this?" Hermione asked curiously with the dust in her left hand. "Last time I took the loot after the of blood, I was too busy before and I even forgot about it. You just remembered it when I said it." "Let me see what's inside." This was the time to open the box, and Ryan rubbed his hands in prayer and opened his pockets. To his surprise, although this pocket is a space bag, the space inside is particularly small. At most it can be larger than the average school bag. Why is there so little space? Lane complained somewhat dissatisfiedly. Know that space equipment that you can carry with you was very rare 1,000 years ago. At that time, it was popular to use certain biological creatures with space power as a space bag. After the animal's skin is peeled off, it is reduced to the size of a slap by special means, Hermione said after putting the teacup on the saucer. Sure enough, Ryan discovered the animal's limbs and tail from the bag, and the animal's mouth was made into the opening of the bag. How do you know this situation? Obviously this is what was taught in class. It can be seen that you didn't listen carefully in Professor Bin's class. He specifically mentioned this when he talked about the magical world thousands of years ago. Said this sentence. It doesn't blame me. Lane shrugged. Except for you, I really can't think of anyone else who can listen carefully to a whole class in Professor Bin's class. After speaking, Ryan took out a small arm-length plain gold box and several medicine bottles made of natural crystal. Through the bottle, you can see some dark things piled up at the bottom of the bottle. This should be the blood of some magical creatures, but it's too long to be broken. Ryan observed a few bottles, pulled out the stopper, sniffed and set the bottle aside. Then took the gold box. There was only one buckle on the gold box. Ryan took the gold box to the middle of the living room and opened the buckle with magic. www.mtlnovel.com. As soon as the box cover opened, a dead scorpion fell out. This is a very rare rune gold scorpion, highly toxic. It should be the little pet of the blood god, but unfortunately the blood died as soon as he died. Lane explained to Hermione that when he spoke, the only one, the dead scorpion, soon weathered into a pile of ashes. Ryan took the box back to the edge of the table, with a silver dagger in it, and a lot of text on the lid of the box. It took a while to discover that this was actually a letter that described how he was injured during the seizure of the Bloodstone at the time. And this box contained the weapon that hurt him, and he vowed that one day he would stab the weapon back to his master. It seems that his Bloodstone was found in Europe, because this dagger is obviously European in style. After pouring the dagger out, Ryan looked at the silver dagger inlaid with rubies. I think we found a good thing. Hermione looked carefully after picking up the dagger, and then said excitedly, "Oh, when did you learn antique identification?" Ryan asked curiously, because from this dagger he can only be determined to be European medieval style and possibly from the goblin hand. Nothing else can be judged. So he was curious how Hermione identified it. Well, isn't it clear that it's not written? Hermione pointed to the handguard part of the dagger, and only then did Ryan find a string of letters engraved on it. I'm still a little careless. Ryan took the dagger and looked at the letters. Then he was surprised to find that the text engraved on the dagger's guard was a familiar name: Godric Gryffindor. Chapter 205, Save People. Hey, my god, I think we have a big discovery now. 35 XS. Ryan was a little incoherent with this dagger. Excited. After all, he now holds the relics of his college founder thousands of years ago. So what are you going to do with the dagger? Hermione had calmed down from the excitement at this time, and asked Ryan an important question. This is the spoils we obtained at the risk of our lives, and it is naturally used. Not to mention how tough this dagger is. The runes on this dagger alone have a great inspiration to us. Ryan took for granted said, "Well, you are right. After all, this is our loot, even if it belonged to the founder of our academy. But since I decided to leave this thing, then try not to be exposed to people to discover. After all, fairies, it has always been thought that as long as they make things, they belong to them. Our hemp wizards can't keep these things," Hermione said with a shrug. After discussing the handling of the loot, the candlestick butler also brought the breakfast, and while eating, Lane said suddenly, "Oh, by the way, I think of something. You said that you only looked at your blood this morning to discover the inheritance of blood power. Where did you get hurt? Is it all right?" After hearing Ryan's words, Hermione's face suddenly turned red, and then she lowered her head and whispered, "I'm fine, you don't have to deal with this matter." She finished her breakfast and returned to her room. 35 XS. This reaction was a bit surprising, but Ryan soon found out that he had just made a very straight man's mistake, which is why a single dog was inexperienced. Fortunately, this incident did not affect much, and everything returned to normal by noon. Time flies, and Bayou passes. In the blink of an eye, Ryan had been taking refuge in this world for almost a week. During this time, the relationship between Belle and the Beast was deepening, and even the Beast could be observed to change a lot because of Belle. At least he no longer buried his head in the soup bowl while drinking soup. Ryan and they gained a lot of knowledge through the study of the curse. There is a small episode here. After learning that everyone was relieved by Ryan's magic, they decided to allow them to study the rose, but this time they refused. After all, the curse on everyone alone is unclear now, let alone the rose that is the focal point of the curse. At the same time, the rose is also related to the life of all the people in this castle. Ryan and they don't want some bad things to happen because of their rash actions. Finally, in the weekend that is almost past this week, the situation has changed. On that day, Ryan and Hermione continued to study the knowledge gained from the curse in the library after lunch. Suddenly the door opened and Belle and the Beast came in. After saying hello to Ryan and them, The Beast pulled out a large golden book from a dark compartment in the library and said to Belle, "This is another thing the witch left me with, a book that will allow you to truly escape from reality. But it is also a punishment, telling me that there is no place for monsters like me outside. Of course, you are different from me." The Beast took Belle's hand on the book. "Think of the place you want to go to the most in your heart." Soon the two disappeared from the library. "A door key that can change the destination as you like?" Hermione looked at Belle where they disappeared and said, a little surprised, "It looks a bit more advanced than our door key, and more like a magic prop that has been visualized by a phantom." "Okay, if I guess right, it's almost the most critical time. I think it's time for us to play." Ryan saw Hermione staring at the place where the two disappeared and began to be stunned, so quickly reminded, "It's true, we should prepare. After all, this is also my first time to participate in the legendary story." Hermione recovered and nodded slightly to Ryan. Sure enough, after Belle and the Beast returned, they invited Ryan to the ball, and the most critical moment finally arrived. Ryan took off their loose-fitting everyday clothes and put on the school uniform robe that asked Mrs. Wardrobe to help with the new work. They later arrived at the auditorium. After all, they came to the ball to be the audience. Simply neat and better. When the dance started, Ryan and they were amazed, even if Belle and the Beast were far apart, but the two in dress were so harmonious on the dance floor. "When will I be as beautiful as Belle?" Looking at Belle on the dance floor, Hermione couldn't help but sigh. "It will be fine when you grow up. After all, I can see you in the future from Belle." Ryan comforted him next to him. "Thank you for your encouragement, but how do you feel like what my father's age said?" Hermione turned her head and said to Ryan on the side, "Maybe because my heart is mature." Ha ha ha. Hermione is really sensitive, and Ryan can only make a ha ha to excuse the topic. The happy time passed quickly. After dancing, Belle saw the suffering father with a magic mirror and decided to save him. The Beast chose to let her go at this time because of love. "Belle, I will go with you. After all, I am a wizard and I might be able to help you." www.mplenovel.com. According to the plan agreed in advance, Hermione volunteered to ride a horse to the town to rescue people, and Ryan helped arrange the defense in the castle. After leaving the castle, the horses galloped fast on the road. When approaching the town, Hermione asked Belle to put her down, and then quietly touched the town under the cover of the phantom spell. When she walked to the square inches the center of the town, just saw the scene where Belle was locked in the carriage. "It looks like I have to wait a little longer," Hermione thought and hid in an alley. After all, there are too many people instigated by Gaston. She can't kill those people, and she can't release many lethal spells. So she couldn't organize these fanatics by herself. In this case, she could only wait for those who were instigated to leave before trying to find a solution. Soon after, the townspeople raised their arms and torches and walked to the path outside the town. When everyone left, only the coach of the psychiatric carriage was left on the square. Now the opportunity came, and after confirming that there was no one in town, Hermione slowly leaned over to the driver. The coachman walked around in the deserted square, looking nervous. After all, the beasts and black magic that Gaston just said really scared him, so now he only walks under the streetlight where there is light, as if a monster might pop out in the darkness at any time. Suddenly he heard a rush of footsteps approaching from behind, but when he turned back, he found nothing behind him. "Is this an illusion that I was scared?" The driver thought of this, but as soon as he turned his head back, he heard a female voice behind him. "I fainted." Then he knew nothing as soon as his eyes were black. Chapter 206, Fairytales should have a perfect ending. Belle's father, who was locked in the carriage, finally untied his heart with his daughter, so he decided to use the inventor's specialty to open the lock and rescue his daughter. But when he had just received the card issued by his daughter, he heard the voice of a very young girl. "A cave open." Then with a metal crash, the door opened. He was surprised to see a girl standing almost the same as his daughter when she was a child. "Belle?" he questioned in surprise. "No, this is Hermione Granger. Come with me to help my witch. I just wondered where she went." At this time Belle in a yellow evening dress from walked behind. "By the way, I think it's time to go to the castle to report to the Beast now. Further you, it's okay, I'm safe here alone. You don't have to control me, you are needed more there." Soon, a white horse set off from the town, carrying two girls who looked like sisters. "I hope nothing happens in the castle." X2. This is the dividing line of the castle. Watching Hermione and Belle leave on horseback, Lane started preparing for battle in the castle. But the biggest difference from the previous battle is that this time the opponent did not make much mistakes, so many combat methods cannot be used. Xiaoqing, you are ready in the hall. You control them as soon as someone comes in. But remember not to injure people. If someone falls, you roll them up and put them aside so as not to be trampled. Under Ryan's order, Xiaoqing drilled out of his pocket and quickly multiplied on the floor of the auditorium. Soon the floor of the auditorium was covered with a thick red carpet. This time it's unlucky. The system is relocating and unable to open the door to the grocery store. Think of the Lane people checking the bottles and cans on their body. The casting materials are not enough. It seems that it can only be used when it is critical. At about the time of preparation in the hall, A lot of furniture rushed into the hall. "Little wizard, I'm sorry to get you into this battle. You can find a place to hide first." The candlestick housekeeper bowed to him when he saw Lane standing in the hall. "Thank you for your hospitality this week, so I will also help you. I just hope my companions and Belle will not go wrong on the road." At this time there was a violent impact from the door, and it seemed that the townspeople had arrived. Even if Mr. Piano and some furniture were blocked at the door was still crumbling. "You are a wizard, is there any magic that will make them stronger?" said the teapot lady, looking at Ryan anxiously. Ryan shrugged helplessly as she looked at the fire outside through the window. "It's no problem to reinforce the door, but my magic is not enough to protect the entire castle. You see they all hold torches. What if they can't open the door and start burning the house?" "The little wizard is right," the candlestick housekeeper said. "It's useless to block this. I have a solution now." After that, he made everyone stand there pretending to be ordinary furniture. Also let Ryan hide on the second floor. With a clatter, the door slammed open, and a group of townsmen fell in. A dozen seconds later, as the wife of the teapot yelled, the battle began. Sleeping dust. Ryan threw a glass bottle filled with psychedelic mushroom spores on the ground, then waved his wand and read it in Old Viking language. A burst of colored dust washed down from the second floor, and most of the townspeople who were exposed to the dust were drowsy. Soon afterwards, they were overthrown by their opponent's furniture, and then they were set aside by Xioking. Xioking also took the opportunity to trip a few people who looked dizzy. It is a pity that because of fear of sequelae, Ryan minimized the power of magic. Therefore, some young and middle-aged people who came this time have not been affected much. Soon many people rushed up, and 3 men with swords went straight to the alarm clock. "Remove the weapon." Ryan picked up the alarm clock with her short legs running slowly, and then read the spell to the guys who rushed up with swords. The sword flew into the air and fell aside, when the wardrobe lady also rushed out to help the 3 men and women scare them away. "Ah, thank you very much." The alarm clock thanked both of them. Then Ryan hid upstairs and disarmed those below, while using magic to save some furniture from the townspeople's axes or sticks. After fighting for a while, Ryan felt the time had come. So the flesh pulled out a string of pearl necklaces made of soy grain-sized pearls found in the world of Plants vs. Zombies last time. Then used the wand to read the spiritual shock. The sound of the spell dropped, and the pearl on the pearl necklace quickly faded and weathered. The townspeople underneath the battles and spells just now are a little tired, and their spirits are at a low point. It was at this time that the candlestick housekeeper lit a portion of the gunpowder. Under Ryan's magic, those people seemed to see a fiery demon and a flamed dragon, and they were frightened and fled. "Yes, that's all. Go out, go out." The furniture began to drive the townspeople. Ryan felt like someone was walking by, but he glanced around and found no one. It seems that the witch should be here, and the story is coming to an end. www.mplnovel.com. Ryan thought for a moment and immediately thought about what was going on. There was also a horseshoe sound at the door, and Belle and Hermione returned. Belle rushed into the door quickly, and then went up the stairs. Hermione followed. "What's going on now?" "I stopped a lot of people here, but it seems that Gaston ran up." "So what should we do now?" Hermione asked quickly. "West Tower, let's go to West Tower." "I think they should return to this place anyway." Lane finished and Hermione ran upstairs. Probably because of the curse at the moment of initiation, various parts of the castle began to collapse. In several places, the stairs were gone, and Lane could only carry Hermione in these places and use a hook to pull the two up. Even so, when passing a staircase, the hook hooked the column and suddenly broke. Fortunately, they used a slow full spell to prompt Ryan to throw the hook again in time to avoid falling from the height of the 5-story building, but even then Ryan also scratched his hand because of the rubble. When they arrived at the West Tower, they saw a shot in the beast, and Belle was trying to help the beast to escape. But on the bridge behind them, Gaston raised his pistol again. Armor. 2 spells hit the beast at the same time to help him block the last shot. Gaston collapsed because of the stone bridge at his feet. But the beast was dying because of the blood loss in the previous battle and 2 gunshot wounds, and Ryan also found that the curse of the most serious problem has been launched. Chapter 207, Return. After Ryan stepped into the tower, he felt there was a very uncomfortable feeling, as if something was slowly dying, so subconsciously launched a magically modified version of the eagle eye to see the magic rose in the glass cover. This is the first time Ryan has used magic to observe this rose. There are countless gold wires connected to the rose, but if you look closely, you will find that these gold wires are composed of one rune after another. And now those gold threads are slowly dimming, just like those gold-plated decorations that slowly oxidize after a long time. One of the thickest gold wires is connected to the beast. Ryan can see that the gold wire is oxidized slightly slower, but now it has become bleak. This is why the beast is dying now. "I beg you to do something to help him. After all, you are wizards," Belle said in a crying voice, came to Ryan. Ryan sighed and looked at Hermione, discovering that Hermione also looked at him nervously. Even at this time they knew the so-called plot, but they were also very worried because their intervention had changed. After a second glance to confirm that the witch was not here, Ryan raised his wand. I can only try my best. Hermione also came over at this time and scratched the wound on her hand, then held Ryan. The injured hand. Magic transmission. This is the earliest application they learned in the past few days after studying the newly acquired blood magic inheritance. After use, two people can communicate with each other magically. But after all, it belongs to the magic of two people, so you need to rest for a while after using it. It seemed that Hermione was as worried as him that the witch could not arrive in time. Thinking of here, Ryan nodded at Hermione, and then began to draw one after another in the air representing runes representing life and nature. These runes quickly flew to the golden threads in the air, and the dim speed of the golden thread slowed down suddenly. Ryan, they felt that the magic in their bodies was pumped out suddenly, and then they both felt their chests were stuffy at the same time, feeling that some cold and thick things were flowing down the corners of the mouth and eyes, and their legs were sitting softly on the ground. Belle also saw Ryan's condition at this time. Their faces suddenly turned white after the magic was released, blood came out of the corners of the mouth and eyes, and then both fell and sat on the ground. It seemed that the two wizards could not support it for a long time. Belle fell on the beast and looked desperately at the lost eyes of the beast and said, "Don't go, don't leave me, I love you." Then kissed the beast's face. The last sentence, "I love you," seemed to trigger something. Ryan looked through the blood-red eyes in front of her and was surprised to find a beautiful middle-aged woman wearing burlap clothes standing in front of a glass cover with roses. How could it be that this person didn't even exist just now? Ryan was shocked. 35XS. The middle-aged lady raised her hands and the rose petals in the glass cover floated slowly. Then she raised her right hand at the beast lying on the ground. The glass cover became powder, and then it turned into a golden glow mist mixed with rose petals to wrap the beast on the ground. Encased in golden mist, the beast flew free of gravity and stood upright in the air. Then the middle-aged woman put down her hood and walked to Ryan and Hermione, who were sitting there because of the force. A light voice came into their ears. "Friends from distant places, I saw the kindness in you, so please accept this gift. I hope you will not give up the goodness now." With her words, a golden book floated to Ryan in front of them, then silently disappeared. At this moment the beast became a prince and Belle hugged together. Ryan turned his head and found Hermione's hands folded on her chin, his eyes glowing with excitement. It seems that women prefer reunion romances regardless of their age or identity. But after seeing the two people start kissing, Hermione felt a little embarrassed to see the person who resembled herself kissing. So he digressed and said, "Let's see what is the gift of the witch." After that, he picked up the big golden book that fell to the ground. "She's not a witch." Just when the woman was close to herself, Ryan finally confirmed the woman's identity. This is also thanks to Ryan's natural baptism with a horseman, which made him feel the powerful natural power in her body. When the woman approached, I think she might be Ningfu. At this time, the cloud that shrouded the castle completely dispersed. Ryan could see through the window that the snow had quickly faded, the flowers and plants in the garden had come back to life, and the whole castle had a new look. The barking from far away also shows that everyone who turned into furniture has also recovered from the curse. There are not many such powerful forces, and only Ningfu and they will use this method to play the world. I think you're right. After speaking, Hermione pushed the opened book to Ryan. This book is written in English and thoroughly explains the application of natural forces. Even people like Hermione who don't have a cold for natural forces can learn about transformations, spells, and herbs from the inside. You keep this book. After all the gain this time is because of you. Hermione finished and handed the book to Ryan. Because she knew what kind of person Hermione was, Ryan took the book in the space bag and wasn't hypocritical, and then said to Hermione, "I'll keep it here. www.mplnovel.com. When are you? Just want to ask me to come." The sun was shining outside, and Belle and the beast that had returned to the prince came to Ryan and saluted him. "Thank you for your help. You will be our best friends. The door here will always be open for you." Ryan returned their salute, and then went downstairs together to see the castle personnel who had known their loved ones in the town after getting rid of the curse. A few hours later, the celebratory ball began, and this time Ryan and Hermione also put on dresses and joined the ball. Unfortunately, their dance level is not high. Fortunately, they used the assassin exercise method for a period of time to make their physical coordination better than normal people, so there was nothing wrong with watching the movements of others at the ball. This celebration lasted for a whole day, and everyone dispersed until the sun was about to set. After having breakfast early the next morning, Ryan and Hermione bid farewell to the prince and Belle. Because at this time the system finally succeeded in locating Ryan's position. After all, he had been away from home for a week. Both Ryan and Hermione wanted to go back quickly. "Will you come back?" Belle asked Hermione reluctantly as he said goodbye. "I think we'll be back, and I wish you a happy wedding." After finishing, Ryan took Hermione back a few steps, waved to the farewell Belle and the prince, and activated the system. Belle and the prince only saw a blue light flash, and Ryan and Hermione disappeared from there. "Will they come again?" Belle asked against the prince. "Yes, our friends will definitely come again." The prince touched Belle's hair. Chapter 208. Safe. A flash of blue light flashed over, and Ryan and Hermione appeared in a dusty warehouse. Footprints were everywhere on the floor of the warehouse, and the door fell inward. We're back, and it seems that the group of wizards who hunted us away has left. Ryan looked around and said, at this time, he also received a prompt from the system. This time, he obtained 12 offset points in the Beauty Beast world, which not only made up for the consumption of the escape system, but also earned 2 net points. Hermione also looked around at this time, and after making sure that it was temporarily safe, she made another opening in her hand, and then drew a strange rune on the palm of her hand with blood. Blood seal. Hermione read in the native Amazonian language. The rune on her hand turned golden when the mantra was recited. After seeing this change, Hermione slapped her hand on her forehead, and golden runes appeared on her forehead and then quickly penetrated into her body. When Ryan responded to what was happening, Hermione had finished the spell, and the whole person was shaking and feeling that she would fall at any time. Ryan hurried forward to support her. There are many ways to keep secrets. Why do you want this most intense? Ryan supported Hermione with some heartache. Don't you know that the magic of blood closure is quite a guardian of your life, and the effect is not unbreakable? Where does the oath go, or is it stronger? Because this spell is launched with its own heart. Unlike the unbreakable oath, you can use some word games to avoid some disadvantages. First, I really don't understand anything else. 35xs. Hermione smiled. Second, your ability is indeed worth guarding with life. Since you are willing to demonstrate this ability to me, I naturally have to be able to afford this trust. Stupid girl. Ryan didn't know what to say at this time, so she hugged her hard. Suddenly a shout broke the silence. Ryan, Hermione, where are you? Ryan heard Professor Sprout's cry. Everyone has entered from outside. Are we safe? Hermione asked, looking at Ryan. Maybe. After all, we are equivalent to leaving for an hour. Maybe the professor and the Brazilian Ministry of Magic have drove those black wizards away, but we still have to be more careful. I played a few roles and pretended to be after running away. Then Ryan added a phantom body curse to both of them before slowly approaching the hall with a small pyramid temple in front. I have to say here that the gift of blood is really useful. Even if the two people walk slowly, it is difficult to see each other with the naked eye, but they can determine the position of the other by feeling the blood of the other. Going out of the tunnel and coming to the lobby, I found that there were several corpses of blood gods lying on the floor of the hall, and there were more blood gods squatting under the pyramid with their heads held. Heroes wearing black clothes with embroidered emblems of the Brazilian Ministry of Magic on their chests walked around. Instead, Professor Sprout stood with President Fernand. Professor Sprout added a loud voice to himself, calling Ryan and Hermione's name over and over again, and hearing her voice already hoarse. Who's there? Anna patrolling the side suddenly pointed his wand at Ryan's position. Don't do it yourself. Ryan finished lifting the illusion curse on the two. You are all right? Great. Professor Sprout ran over, but suddenly stopped a few meters away from them. The two of you, please tell us separately which courses did you take this year? I need to make sure that the two of you are not fake counterfeiters. I take 3 courses, arithmetic divination, ancient magic, and protection of magical creatures. Hermione said. I chose the same class as she did. Ryan followed. Professor Sprout was very clever when asking questions. When asking, he directly asked what courses you have taken. If you don't know, people will generally subconsciously think that the courses of the two people are different. It's really you, it's just fine to be fine. Professor Sprout came up and hugged the two in his arms. Just after the smoke disappeared, we found that the two of you were gone, and only after we defeated the attackers did we know from Alicia that you were swallowed by a sudden appearance of a tanking. Later, we interrogated the prisoners to understand their conspiracy, and it took some time to break in here before we realized that someone not only escaped from that space but also hit the blood gods, but they never knew the invisible attacker. I thought it might be that you are still alive, and now it seems that you are indeed. By the way, how did you escape? Finally Professor Sprout asked. Ryan and Hermione had aligned their confession before, only that they fell into the space after falling, and then hit the control hub of the temple by accident. Later, they didn't know what the whole space collapsed, and they took the opportunity to escape. After escaping to this place, they kept moving because they used other spells to cover their breath, and the dark wizards here were too busy to cope with the offense and did not search carefully, so they kept hiding until now. You have done very well this time, and just now President Fernand said that he has applied for the Merlin Medal for you from Wisingama, Professor Sprout said with a smile after letting go of them. Now that people are okay and have received honors, they are also very glorious as professors. Looking at Ryan and Hermione with grey faces and tired faces, Professor Sprout soon ended the conversation and brought them back to school. As soon as I entered Castro Bruce www.mtlnovel.com, the school doctor took them to the school hospital for a full body examination, and it was found that both of them had a magic overload and caused injuries. This made Ryan and the two of them only stay in the hospital for one night today. After changing his sick suit, Ryan saw that besides Hermione's bed, there was a person lying on a bed at the end of the ward. At this time, the school doctor came over with a bottle of purple medicine and poured the medicine into the cup on the bedside table of Lane while saying, "Thank goodness, Your injuries are not so severe but can be recovered. I can completely lose the magic precedent. After he finished, he handed over the cup of purple medicine. I suggest you drink it in one bite. It's a bit irritating. Ryan looked up a small cup of medicine, and found that the taste of the medicine was like Huoxiang's Kai, which had been fortified several times. As the drug swallowed, he could feel like a stream of fire spread from his throat all the way to his stomach. Eat sugar. The school doctor handed him a piece of skull candy. But really you are lucky. After that he pointed to the figure lying at the end. Professor Ferdinand now takes a dozen medicines a day because he has been kept in the greenhouse for several months and was repeatedly interrogated by the counterfeit with the soul-draining curse. That's why he said that he wanted the retreat study. Asked the old buck to help him replace the lesson. Fortunately, his problems can be recovered, but it needs to be adjusted slowly. Seeing that Ryan's expression had recovered, the school doctor went to Hermione's bed and asked her to drink the remaining half of the bottle of medicine. Looking at Hermione's wrinkled face after taking the medicine, Lane felt it was good to be back in her daily routine. Chapter 209, Compensation and Christmas. Late at night, it was dark in the school hospital. Only a few street lights in the corridor at the entrance of the ward radiated a soft yellow light. Suddenly a shadow went quietly into the ward. As soon as he came to Ryan's bed, Ryan opened his eyes and grabbed his wand and pointed at the shadow. Don't do it. It's me, Principal Fernand. After that, the dark shadow lit his wand and shone on his face. It turns out to be you? But at 3 in the morning you run so quietly in front of my bed to do what? I thought someone was going to attack me. After all, no one could pretend to be the principal in the school, and Ryan let out a breath. Wand. But this time he was in a very bad mood. After all, when anyone was woken up from a dream in the early morning, he was not in a good mood. I'm mainly here to talk to you about this accident. After all, you have suffered a lot because of our mistakes. Principal Fernand said a little embarrassedly. As he said, he applied protection around the bed magic. It's just that some things are not suitable for everyone to know, so I chose this time when no one came to you. Seeing a principal be so sincere, Ryan's mood also calmed down. He sat up against the head of the bed and motioned the headmaster to sit beside the bed. I just want to know what happened. You have to know that your trap almost killed me and my classmates, not to mention my great loss in this adventure. After he finished, he took out Clinwy's teeth. Show the principal the remaining handle. This is a complete mistake. Principal Fernand sat down and said, we didn't expect Professor Ferdinand to be left out when he went to work in Mahogany Town. We didn't expect that there was one under our school. Fold the space so that the leaf used to connect has no effect at all. But this time it was thanks to you that you avoided the school from being hit hard, and it was also because you kept the blood gods of the temple from attacking, which made it impossible for the people of Chimera Society to escape. Finally, let them sneak into the school. The backbone is basically wiped out by us. Principal Fernand paused and continued. So as our apologies and thanks, we will replace the saint notes that you promised in advance to Grindelwald's metamorphic notes. I know Grindelwald is great, but is his metamorphosis note worth so much? Ryan asked curiously. Everyone thinks Grindelwald's black magic is powerful, but they often ignore his metamorphic magic as powerful. Do you know that his metamorphosis was comparable to Professor Dumbledore? Okay, I know its preciousness, and I accept your compensation. Ryan thought about it and felt that he was not at a loss. After all, a wizard like Grindelwald was so powerful. Any ideas and knowledge of him are very precious. Besides, this adventure in the Temple of Blood God has yielded a lot of things. Although the inheritance of the Blood God has not been obtained, the wizards who have been made into cocoons finally gave part of their knowledge after successfully revenge. Ryan, such as the corpse manipulation and transformation technology on the Jadeite's lab, plus the Gryffindor dagger, now has Grindelwald's transform notes. In short, this time it was quite fruitful. In the inheritance of Taoism that he obtained earlier, he repeatedly emphasized that blessings cannot be enjoyed, and then think about yourself as a hemp wizard without a background. Too much gain may cause unnecessary trouble. What's more, this time he got too many things at one time. He needs enough time to digest and transform into his own strength. So Ryan felt he didn't need to fight for more things from the principal. In the same way, it can also leave a good impression on the principal. After all, people who are too greedy do not like it. After listening to Ryan, Principal Fernand's eyes softened a lot. Then he said with embarrassment, that, I'm sorry, something went wrong with your Merlin Jazz medal. Isn't it gone? Ryan showed a helpless expression. Although he said that he was not very interested in this kind of thing, but originally there was, and now it suddenly did not make people feel bad. No, of course not. It turned out that I applied for the first-class medal for you, but we have transported an important thing in advance. Lane guessed it was the Clock of Doom. If there is no such thing as testimony, why is Ingamo refused to believe that you saved the school? So you can only award you a second-level medal in accordance with your critical role in extinguishing the blood gods and taking your life. After looking at him, he glanced at Ryan and found that Ryan had no expression on his face, so he continued. The organ you started this time basically wiped out the backbone of the blood religion. We later wiped out almost the rest of the net. You didn't have to worry about them getting revenge, and because of our sake, you lost the first-class medal. But your credit for the second-level medals, it is beyond. So our people divided your credit for her little girlfriend's self-denial to save others and assisted in destroying the blood god, and operated a third-level medal as compensation. Hermione is not my girlfriend for now. After all, we are still young. Ryan whispered for some period. Young man, understand. Principal Finan gave him a meaningful smile. By the way, I am very sorry for the loss of your magic knife. After all, there are not many things that are as precious as weapons made by fairies. I will discuss with those people and give you a suitable compensation. Now you take a good rest. I hope you can get well soon. After finishing talking, Principal Finance stood up, walked quietly into the corridor, and disappeared. Ryan also lay on the bed and fell asleep. From the following days until Christmas, or 5 or 6 days, Ryan and Hermione stayed in the hospital for observation. When Professor Sprout came to visit them, he told them not to worry about the remaining courses. The professors would press O to register their grades. Anyway, you can get this result if you don't have an accident. Professor Sprout said so. In addition, the students of Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw also visited them. Especially Ravenclaw second-year student Alicia was crying after seeing them. www.mplnovel.com. Listening to Janku said that the little girl has been blaming herself these days. She thinks it is because of her it only hurt the seniors and sisters. Ryan and Hermione quickly comforted the schoolgirl. During the exchange, they found that the schoolgirl was also a person who liked reading and studying very much. Because several people had a common interest in chatting, the exchange took a lot of time. It wasn't until the school doctors drove them away under the pretext of interfering with the rest of the patients that Alicia left with Janku. Principal Finand also sneaked in once a night, and he told Ryan the good news that they confirmed that the high-level blood gods who had cursed the horseman Betty were wiped out by Ryan in the pyramid before. It means that Aunt Betty's curse is lifted. Unfortunately, everyone has nothing similar to the tools that Lane has destroyed in the past few days, so after the discussion, it was decided to use a shop in Diagon Alley as compensation. After receiving the title deed, Ryan knew the value of that powerful magic weapon in the magic world. A well-located 2-story shop in Diagon Alley. He used to pass by the store before and found that the store was actually acting as a warehouse for other stores. Being able to make Quangpu a warehouse for rent, Ryan can only admire the awe-inspiring degree of the principal and his companions. Finally, it was time for Christmas. When they got up from the bed that morning, they received many Christmas gifts, not only from the UK, but also from local friends. One of the most worth mentioning is that Hermione sent a red and yellow scarf she wore this time. Ryan finally knew what she was doing to avoid herself in the hospital bed these days. Thankfully, after another comprehensive examination in the afternoon, the school doctor finally nodded and they could attend the Christmas banquet in the evening. Chapter 210, Banquet and Home. As we all know, Castro Bruzzo is built in the Amazon rainforest. In the southern hemisphere, they are in the hottest season of the year in December. But the wizard had magic. When Ryan and Hermione came out of the school hospital and walked to the auditorium, it was found that the ground close to the auditorium was covered with a thick layer of snow that would not melt, and the snow kept falling on the ceiling. This is really magical. Even if I knew it was a magical effect, I felt that the scenery in front of me was extremely magical. Because the school doctor just spent some time checking the body, when they rushed to the auditorium, there were already a lot of people sitting inside. Even though most of the students have already gone home for the holidays, there are still many students staying this time to attend this Christmas party as a farewell party for Hogwarts exchange students. The entire auditorium was renovated with magic makeup and decorated with various plants everywhere. The columns and walls were covered with green vines, and clusters of small flowers bloomed on the vines. The ground is covered with a soft layer of moss, stepping on it like a top-quality Persian rug. Various Christmas decorations are hung between the plants, creating a strong festive atmosphere. When Ryan and Hermione found a table at Hogwarts, they could feel a lot of people watching them. They chatted with several classmates normally, pretending not to feel these. After a moment, President Fernand and several others walked up to the stage from the side door. Janku next to him said, Professor McGonagall, Minister Fudge. Why are there so many people here today? What's the matter? It's great to see you all get together. President Fernand first made a speech. Especially in this semester, exchange students who came from afar in the UK have added a new sum to our school. The official stereotypes around the world are so boring. Ryan saw that most of the students were quietly doing their own things underneath, so he took out an empty book and began to calculate the use of a trick in Grindelwald's notes. After studying magic for a while, Principal Fernand raised his voice and said, in view of the performance of some outstanding students in the last school crisis, we Singamo will award them the Merlin Medal. After the headmaster made a request, wearing a striped cloak and wearing a green ribbon with a gold medal on the chest, the British Minister of Magic Fudge stood at the podium and began to speak eloquently from Brazil and the United Kingdom to the importance of the younger generation of wizards communicating with each other. Finally, before everyone was impatient, Fudge said the main point. Now invite Hogwarts third grade students Ryan Liang and Hermione Granger to come to the stage. Because of their performance in the last incident, I will represent twice. Ingamo gave them Merlin Medal. The two stood up in the envious eyes and applause of everyone and walked onto the table. After saluting to the teachers on the stand, they stood in front of Fuji. Thank you for your extraordinary courage and sacrifice in destroying the Blood Religion conspiracy and destroying the Blood Religion. After that, Fudge put Ryan on his chest and put a purple ribbon on her chest, and Hermione. Bai Chong's gold medal took the lead in applauding. In the applause, several reporters began to take pictures to record this scene. They desperately pressed the shutter to record this important moment from different angles. Hey, seeing how young they are, they have made such a big contribution at such a young age. It's incredible. This is the praise from some of the guests on the podium. Why is it that the British have made great contributions here? This is a speech by some Castro Bruzio students who ate lemons. Millen's beard. There are really third-year students who can participate in such a fierce battle. This is some students who are working in the Brazilian Ministry of Magic and know the inside story. Senior and sister are so handsome. This is a cheer from a fan who was rescued last time. In the applause and cheers of everyone, the two returned to their seats. I think this medal is stained with your light. Actually, I didn't do anything this time. I really don't know why I got this medal. Hermione whispered to Ryan in embarrassment after sitting down. You can risk your life to save people in an emergency situation is enough to get the medal. Not to mention that 2 medals are more than a medal to add luster to the school. Lane comforted. After the award ceremony, there is a hearty Christmas dinner. The rich dishes make everyone satisfied with the food. At this time, reporters from the Prophet Daily also came to interview the two of them. Fortunately, this is a young male reporter, and it should not be as random as Rita Skeeter. Therefore, Ryan said something thankful to the school and the Ministry of Magic for cultivating a kind of no nutrition, but the expression of the reporter should be more satisfactory. Soon Minister Fudge also came down from the stage and came to Ryan. They shook hands with him and greeted them. The reporter of the Daily Prophet took a lot of photos at this time. Fudge was indeed a qualified politician, at least after the conversation. Ryan felt that he was a very amiable person. Thinking of his crazy energy in the original 5th part, it can only be said that when the right is there, it will really confuse people's eyes and make people lose all their normal IQ. In short, the Christmas banquet was successfully concluded in a harmonious atmosphere. After the banquet, Ryan was once again warmly welcomed when he walked into the long-term car. I really didn't expect that my students would get the Merlin Medal in the 3rd grade. Professor McGonagall, wearing a green robe, said, at least you are the youngest Merlin Medal winner in these 30 years. I am proud of you. After Professor McGonagall said, everyone also held a small celebration in the common room of the carriage. It wasn't until 10 o'clock in the evening that everyone was unwilling to be rushed back to the dorm by the professors. www.mcnovel.com. After all, they will embark on a journey back to the UK tomorrow morning. As soon as breakfast was finished the next morning, the steam front of the Black Hogwarts Express dropped from the sky. When the train was adjusted, Mr. Fernand, the president of Castro Bruzio, brought a group of faculty members to the train to say goodbye to the teachers and students of Hogwarts. Hogwarts students participated in the farewell ceremony collectively under the leadership of Vice President McGonagall. Finally, the teachers and students of Hogwarts boarded the train in the farewell of the Castro Bruzio faculty and staff. The train slowly rose and soon disappeared from the sight of the Castro Bruzio faculty and staff too. It's a lot easier on the way back. After all, it's Christmas holiday now, and there are still some teaching tasks to be completed in the car like on the way. Ryan took advantage of this opportunity to get Hermione to ponder the golden magic book that Ningfu gave them. The magic recorded in this book is much older than the magic they are learning now, completely by mimicking various phenomena in nature and the instincts of various creatures to release spells. So there is a lot of metamorphosis in this book. Unlike modern magic that gradually changes what is observed to suit humans, this book's approach is to temporarily modify the human body's magic cycle with magic power, so that people can directly release those original magics. This kind of magic is more powerful and closer to the essence of magic, but the price paid is that it is more difficult to learn to use it at the same time. The risk will increase, and compared with modern magic, there are pros and cons. Because of the difficulty of getting started, Ryan and Hermione's progress in analyzing and studying this book on the road is quite slow. Until the train returned to the United Kingdom and drove to the platform of 9 3/4, the research of the two had not made much progress. Chapter 211, Guest On. Although researching Ningfu's magic books did not reveal anything, Ryan and Hermione were not frustrated. After all, this is the crystallization of part of the knowledge of a secondary deity. It would be very strange if what can be researched in a short time. After packing up, everyone walked out of the platform, and the family was already waiting there. After saying goodbye to Hermione, Ryan got into his own car. Dad, why didn't you drive out the sports car at home? Ryan was a little puzzled, because his mother wrote to him that his father went out now and prefers to drive a sports car. So Ryan was a little strange to see his father driving the SUV. I think too, but it is snowing today. The chassis of the sports car is too low. I worry about being scratched. Mr. Lambert shrugged a little bit depressed. After returning home, it was naturally his mother's chatter. but Ryan felt very warm. After dinner, Ryan gave his parents this Brazilian gift. After all, not everything in Mahogany Town is exclusively for wizards, and Ryan bought a lot of gifts that can be used by people who are not magic. Some wood carvings with local indigenous styles are very popular with fathers, while mothers prefer purple propolis produced by a local magic bee. But they all raved about a kind of coffee beans with porcelain luster. Ryan knew that this kind of coffee planting needs magic. After special treatment, the grown coffee beans are more refreshing than coffee beans. But there is no coffee in ordinary coffee beans because of damage to the human body. After chatting happily for a night, Ryan finally returned to his familiar bed and took a good sleep. Early the next morning, he was woken by the knocking sound from the window glass. Oh my god, people don't have a good rest at Christmas. Who the is that? Thinking of Ryan jumping from the bed to the wooden floor and looking at the windows, he found that there was nothing outside the window. Is it too tiring to go out this time, so that there are hallucinations? Ryan thought. Suddenly, the voice of his father, Mr. Lambert, came from the outside. Hey, son, come out and have a look. It seems to have something for you. Have my stuff? Ryan quickly dressed and rushed downstairs to the hallway facing the door. Just opened the door. The cold temperature outside made him tremble involuntarily. Here, father greeted him with his thick gloves. I was just clearing the snow in the yard, and I saw this bird falling from your window. I saw it grabbing a letter and wondered if someone would write to you. He finished putting a grey feather duster. The same thing was handed over. This feather duster is a bit familiar. Lane thought about taking something from his father, an owl who had passed out, and a letter, and the names of Fred Weasley and George Weasley were written on the envelope. Weasley's owl really should be changed. Errol now looks worse than last year. Ryan hurried back to the room and asked her mother to borrow a basket to put Errol into the fireplace. Go up and then unfold the letter. The letter first greeted him from the twins, and then told him that because they had been caught by his mother in an experiment, it is not appropriate to mail them materials. It happened that Ginny was going to visit Hermione tomorrow, and they could just take this opportunity to visit Ryan and take some things home by the way. At the end of the letter, the twins said that if Ryan is free, please reply to them as soon as possible. Ryan glanced at the owling owl shrunken in the basket, and felt that the weather might have caused it to die. Parents welcomed the visit of Ryan's friends, especially when they learned that the visiting friend was the child of the official of the Ministry of Magic who was directed by Ryan before coming to school. After all, Mr. Weasley left a good impression on his family. Mother Sally said she had been worried about whether Ryan would be lonely at school without friends, and it is really good news for her classmates to come to visit. So after finishing his meal, Ryan went to the Hermione's house and asked her to borrow an owl, braving the snowflakes in the sky. After ringing the doorbell, the door opened, which happened to be the one Hermione opened. Ryan, what's the matter with you coming here so early? I want to borrow your Hermes to use, because I want to send a letter back to the twins of Weasley, and it seems that their family Errol can't send any more letters. I know about this. The twins should come with Ginny tomorrow. You can come in and have a cup of tea and wait a minute. I will send Hermes together. After writing my reply to Ginny, after wiping the slush from the shoes on the non-slip mat at the door, Lane entered Hermione's house. The overall style of her home is biased towards cool colors. The walls are painted light blue, and the furniture is similar colors. The gray sofa in the living room is arranged in an L shape with a small coffee table in the middle. There is a fireplace on the wall further forward. For example, there are bookshelves on both sides, and the inside is full of books. There are small photo frames everywhere, with photos of Hermione and her family. Then Ryan sat on the sofa drinking a cup of black tea and watched Hermione write a letter at the dining table next to the small restaurant. Why are you alone at Christmas? Ryan asked strangely. It wasn't the last time we made a profit in Treasure Hunt. My parents decided to expand their dentist's clinic. Today, the decoration workers said that there was a problem found in a place, so they felt hurry. Hermione sighed. Write a letter and say www.mplnovel.com. Can you still find decoration workers at Christmas? Lane was shocked. He had lived in the UK for so many years and had never seen a worker who was able to work overtime during the holidays in a non-emergency state, except for the house elf. These people were your compatriots hired in Chinatown, or your father helped to introduce them. Working overtime is more positive than my parents. This is also good. It is estimated that my parents' dentist's clinic will be at the end of the Christmas holiday. Can continue to operate. Soon Hermione finished writing the letter and hung her letter and Ryan's letter on her owl legs. Then Ryan took the owl from the shelf to the window and let it fly. He felt that the owl seemed to be fatter than when he bought it. The owl quickly disappeared into the grey sky, and Ryan also took the opportunity to leave her home at this time. With the sound of the car early the next morning, the Weasley twin brothers came down from an old turquoise Ford Anglia car and knocked on the door of the Lane family. Huh? Your father sent you here? Ryan opened the door and asked the twin brothers of Weasley to enter the door, looking at the man in the car that was slowly driving away behind them. Of course, our mother is not worried about the two of us bringing our lovely sister to London. It happened that our father was going to work overtime today, so he asked him to drive us over, and now he sent our sister Ginny to Hermione and took us back when he returned home at noon. The twins replied one by one, and Ryan took them to the living room to make a cup of tea for each of them. Today, Ryan's parents went to the shopping street to make room for their son, and only Ryan was at home. "Okay, what's the progress of your research now?" Ryan asked after everyone sat down on the living room sofa. Chapter 212, Guest Down. "The progress of our research is slower than expected, or your progress is a bit too fast." The twins sang in harmony. "Hey, why is it that your own research is slow and you blame others for making progress quickly?" Ryan said in a fit of breath, completely ignoring the fact that he got it by relying on the resources of the world and a large number of human volunteers. Yes, human volunteers. Because of the lack of resources on the wasteland, most people have been pardoned for certain things they have done to survive. However, some people have not been pardoned, and the worst of these crimes will be transported to the college as human trials, such as some predators who have slaughtered settlements and even let a few months-old babies pass, or some habit cannibals are all villains who cannot even be called humans. We didn't mean that, but the data you gave is too detailed. We can even skip some human trials, and the whole progress can be greatly pushed forward. The only problem is that the number of things we have invented now seems far away. Not enough, Fred explained. Human trials? Who are you going to find? After visiting the laboratories at the Radiation World Academy, Lane is now somewhat sensitive to these human trials. It's mainly ourselves. We might hire some people later, George said a little uncertainly. No need for the time being. The data in my hand is enough to support the most unstable part of the research. Only some volunteers are needed when the final product is finalized, but at that time I think the product should not cause much harm to the human body. You wait for me first, I will show you the latest research. After finishing, Ryan ran upstairs to get information. After he went downstairs, he found that the twins were interested in observing various electrical appliances in the living room. After discovering that Ryan went downstairs, the twins coughed, and Fred said, "We are only interested in electrical appliances here. I really didn't expect Muzz to come up with so many convenient ways to live without magic." "That's natural. There is an old saying in the East that the stone of other mountains can attack jade. It means that we can make use of the advantages of other things to make up for our shortcomings. I think the wizarding world is now too closed, even blocking the overall progress," Ryan said and put the information on the coffee table. George took the information and unfolded it, saying, "You are right. Some wizards are just old antiques, and they are complacent against any changes. I think this is the reason why the wizards have developed behind moles." After reading the information for a while, George raised his head and said, "We can now confirm that coma sugar and fever sugar are basically successful. But why do you let us reduce the amount of silverleaf clover in the nose blood sugar research?" "It's very simple. The silverleaf clover is too strong for anticoagulation. If you use a lot of nasal blood bovine sugar in a short period of time, there is a small chance that it may cause dangerous internal bleeding. After all, we sell joke products. If dangerous, it's not appropriate," Lane said with a shrug. "Okay. The effect is almost the same." "You are right. If there is a security risk, it will violate our original intention." Fred nodded. "Did this fat tongue toffee also need to modify the formula due to safety issues?" "Yes, it is necessary to change the order of magic injection to make the tongue as long as possible rather than fat, because the tongue route enlargement may cause suffocation, which is also more dangerous." "What about sugar?" "You bounced too much acacia bean powder and vomited so much after eating that you couldn't put the antidote into your mouth. If you don't reduce the vomiting ingredients, the only effective solution I can think of is vomiting per serving. Take a therapeutic needle outside the sugar and inject the antidote directly subcutaneously." For more than an hour, Ryan has been explaining the twins to the various recommendations in the report. After a long debate, they finally got the report. After solving the problems in the report, everyone started chatting to the store. "Fred and I have always wanted to open a joke shop. After all, the update rate of the Zoko Magic Joke Shop is too slow. Many prank toys are not even different from the products of our father's generation. I think there is no way to bring it to everyone." "Go Joy," George said. "But our mother hopes that we can go to the Ministry of Magic like a father to find a stable position." Fred shook his head and said, "So now our research dare not be discovered by our mother. I personally think that you should put this thing for the time being. After all, this year is your OWL's year." For parents, the best way to judge the status of their children is the test score. If you test this year, it is estimated that the day will be very bad. Sad. We also don't want to make our mother sad, but we really don't know what to do. "By the way, you have all the exams every year. Is there anything you can do?" Fred asked, leaning on Ryan's shoulder. "In this way, I think that all the things you invented have basically come out, but they lack enough time to perfect it. I will find ways to help you perfect this semester after Christmas." www.mplnovel.com. You go to Assault to study for a semester. After all, from these inventions, I can see that your level of transforming spells and potions is not low. If targeted assault is enough, one academic year is enough to meet the OWL's exam. Lane thought want to say to the twins. "Will this be too much trouble for you?" said the twins embarrassedly. "No trouble. It's equivalent to reading the textbooks from the 1st to 5th grade and summarizing the key points. This doesn't waste much time for me, but can help me learn. Besides, I have self-study textbooks to for the content of the grade is now. It is time to look at the content of the 5th grade, Lane said with a smile. Well, I can't understand your idea of a good student. But thank you anyway, George said with a shrug. After discussing this heavy topic about the exam, the rest of the time was when Ryan told about his experience as an exchange student in Brazil, and the twins were quickly attracted to the different places in the narration that were very different from Britain. The discussion did not end until Mr. Weasley drove to the door at noon. After the Weasley twins left, the rest of the Christmas holiday was very calm. It's just that because the library in the holiday community didn't open, Ryan and Hermione could only go to each other's house to study Ningfu's magic book. On the last day before the Christmas holiday, when they took the Hogwarts Express back to school, they finally researched a key point about the magic book. It seems that they can start to practice after returning to school. This also brought a happy ending to the Christmas holiday. Ryan felt a little excited when the train entered Hogsmeade platform. After leaving the school for one semester, he finally returned to the familiar school. Chapter 213, Dementors and Firebolt. At Hogsmeade Station, the students returning to school took a carriage to Hogwarts Castle. Because the dates for returning students to school are not very concentrated at the end of Christmas, there are not many people on the carriage. Ryan and Hermione easily found an empty carriage and got on. Lane, what is pulling the car, and why have I never seen it before? Hermione asked with some surprise after taking a look at the car. Yeechi, Ryan replied succinctly, believing that Hermione must have previewed the whole book. Where are the magical animals? A brief reminder is enough at this time. Because you saw a human death in the Pyramid Temple? Hermione suddenly realized after hearing Ryan's answer. The car fell into a somewhat awkward silence, in which the carriage rolled forward. After bypassing the black lake of the school, in front of a pair of magnificent cast iron doors, flanked by many stone pillars, there are winged wild boars. They saw 2 tall, hooded Dementors standing at the gate guarded on both sides. At the same time, the surrounding temperature dropped a lot. Hold this. Looking at Hermione's face, who was sitting opposite, was not pretty. Ryan took out a runestone guarded by his soul and handed it over. After receiving the runestones, Hermione felt a warm current flowing from the stone in her hand and flowing all over her body along her arms. The pressure and cold brought by the Dementors all disappeared. I really don't know why these things were sent to school, Ryan complained as he looked at the slowly moving gate and shook his head. But the runestone just now proved that in addition to the patron saint curse, there are some other means that can be used against Dementors. Just back to school. Just to catch up with the meal. When eating, many students looked at Ryan here. It seems that news of his second Merlin medal has been spread. While he was eating a piece of roasted chicken breast, someone next to him patted his shoulder, and Ryan looked up and saw dazzling red hair. Ron, long time no see. I really didn't expect you to go out so thrilling this time. It's not like we are stuck in school and have to endure Dementors flying around the school, Ron said with some envy. Thrilling? I'd rather stay in school and be with the Dementors. This time we almost went out and gave away our lives. If Ryan wouldn't help, it would probably be impossible for me to return. After listening to Ron, Hermione said uncomfortably, Okay, don't discuss this anymore. Ron turned around and said to Ryan, You know, Harry received a Firebolt this Christmas. We won the College Cup Quidditch class this time, not small. Firebolt? I saw it during the summer vacation. It wasn't cheap. Ryan said with some envy, Harry's godfather of Black Dog is really rich. Firebolt is the same as the top sports car of Mull World, although the real top treasures of the wizards cannot be bought by Gallon, such as Harry's cloak. But the treasures or crossbow arrows that can be bought with money should be regarded as the top products. By the way, who paid so much money to give Harry such an expensive broom? Hermione asked suddenly, as if thinking of something. It's normal for her to ask such questions. Just like the acquaintances around us, if someone gave him a top sports car one day, she would definitely ask who gave it. I don't know. Harry also came from the front at this time. There is no card and no sender. It is completely an anonymous package. Well, who would send such a valuable thing as Harry without telling him who it was? Hermione asked. Before Harry had time to say anything, Professor Mike walked over and said, I heard someone gave you a broomstick, Potter. After asking clearly who did not say who sent it, Professor McGonagall went upstairs with Harry. After Ryan and Hermione took the timetable from Professor Sprout and returned to the common room after eating, they saw a circle of people around when they entered the door. In the middle was Harry sitting behind the table and holding his head in frustration. Leo uncomforted him on the side. What happened? Ryan asked curiously. Harry's Firebolt was confiscated by Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall was worried that Sirius was a trap for Sirius. Percy drilled out of the crowd and said to Ryan, but seriously, I think Professor McGonagall is right. Harry always has an accident on the Quidditch stadium every year. What if the broom happens again? Who did Professor McGonagall tell you? Ron stood on Harry's shoulder at this moment and looked up at the people around him. As soon as Ryan saw that the situation was not good, he hurried to the front and said to Ron, don't doubt your classmates. This broom has been handed out for a Christmas holiday. During this time, have you been hiding this broom without telling others? Harry pulled Ron's clothes corner at this time to let him sit down. and then said to the students around him, "Sorry, Ron was only a little anxious to see the Firebolt being taken away. I think it has nothing to do with everyone. After all, during the holidays, every day I took the Firebolt to the common room and wiped it, and flew 2 circles on the playground outside. In this case, Professor McGonagall definitely knew that I had a Firebolt." "Yeah." Percy also stood up. "Harry received such a valuable gift. Professor McGonagall must ask who sent it." He told the truth that the broom was brought back for inspection. You reading www.uukanzu.com. After all, Professor McGonagall has always been a great Sirius people. There will be no ambiguity in this kind of thing that may hurt Harry's life. Now that the matter is clear, everyone soon disperses. Only Quidditch Captain Wood and a few players gathered around Harry to talk about a solution. After all, during the last game, Harry fell from the sky under the influence of the Dementors and caused the game to lose. So the next game is very important. The Firebolt is the most important hope for a comeback, so all the members of the Quidditch team gathered around Harry to discuss, trying to find a way to allow Professor McGonagall to return the broom earlier. I really don't understand why Ron is so emotional. Doesn't he know that he almost made a bunch of hatreds for Harry? But fortunately Harry reacted in time. Hermione and Ryan said after sitting down on the sofa by the fireplace. It seems that after a few years of Hermione's participation in the homework group, the emotional quotient actually increased much faster than when he was with Harry Ron in the original book. Ryan thought of an old father-like smile here, saying, "But at least this kind of person goes straight, and making friends with them doesn't need to bother to guess what they are thinking." Problem: we must learn to tolerate defects in others. "You said the same," Hermione said after staring at Ryan. "I think I used to be too proud and should have caused you a lot of trouble. Now I remember that when you were writing homework together, you helped me a lot when I had problems communicating with others. So thank you." "It's nothing." Lane smiled and began to read the notes that Percy had just lent him, while Hermione was writing. The last night of the holiday was spent in this quiet and warm atmosphere. Chapter 214. Streaks and Werewolves. At the end of the second day of the holiday, the school begins classes. The first class is the class of protection of magical creatures. It's not a comfortable thing to spend 2 hours on a snow-covered playground in January, but Hagrid is ingenious to let everyone learn about fire lizards. In this lesson, students collect dead branches and leaves to keep the fire, while flame-loving or lizards jump around on the cracked, white-hot wood. I have to say that this lesson is better than people think. At the end of the course, Ryan ran to ask Hagrid about the eagle's winged beast, and learned that Hagrid was found to have nothing to do with the accident under Dumbledore's guarantee. Winged Beast went to London on April 20th to attend the hearing. Ryan can only comfort Hagrid, because he knows that those who deal with the Dangerous Creatures Committee have been bought by Malfoy. No matter how Hagrid prepared, it is impossible for Dumbledore to make trouble with the Ministry of Magic. But it was clear that the eagle-headed horse with a winged beast would not die, and Ryan decided to discuss it with the Horde tribe in 2 days. When the executioner came, he could steal Buckbeak and put it to the horseman. Of course, this kind of thing cannot be told to Hagrid, otherwise, it will definitely leak before the action. When he returned to the common room after class that day, Ron took his spot to find Ryan. "Ryan, can you help me see my mouse? I think it's getting worse from the summer vacation, but I haven't found out why." "Ron, I will see someone, but I am not a pet doctor." Ryan looked at him helplessly. "The owner of the pet shop said that it has reached the end of its life, and I know that he should be cured, so I thought, is there any way to make it more comfortable? As long as it is not when the blood is on the spot." Ron is also a reasonable person. "How about euthanasia? You must know that in the Mole world, if the pet is not cured, its owner will let them die without pain and avoid them suffering from illness." As soon as the words fell, Ryan saw Bian desperately waving his paws and tried to run out of Ron's hand. Not to mention that Peter Dwarf's desire to survive is so strong. "You see that it's quite energetic now. It should be to live. So is there any other way?" Ron said quietly just after speaking. Ryan decided that this mouse was an animagus. After all, the animals in the magical world were clever, but they could only understand simple human words. The proper nouns like euthanasia are theoretically incomprehensible to these animals. "Then show me." Ryan finished taking the mouse from Ron. After taking the mouse, Ryan really wanted to strangle it, but thinking about Peter's record of blowing half a street that year still suppressed this idea. "It might be better to change the environment," Ryan said after looking at the mouse pretendingly. "In this way, you can try it by putting it in me first. But you'd better put it in a cage. After all, I am not the owner of it. It would be bad if it runs around everywhere." "It sounds like a way. Wait for me." Ron finished and ran back to the dormitory. After a while, he carried the spotted cage down and carried a paper bag in addition to the cage. "Yes. The paper bag is filled with food specially bought for it, and you can feed it 10 grains a day," Ron said and handed it over. "Come on," Lane said vowedly. His heart is now more happy, because he finally controlled an uncertain factor. After the corresponding spots were brought into Ryan's bedroom, the anxiety was also reduced a lot. "I thought it might be because I was not looking for Sirius now." After dealing with the various things, Ryan entered the Emerald Dream at night to greet the friends in the Forbidden Forest, and just happened to meet the Aunt Betty, who was happy, and Aunt Betty told him that Wolf would go to the edge of the forest tomorrow. Ryan and Hermione rushed to the edge of the Forbidden Forest just after the Black Magic Defense class the next day. The Forbidden Forest after the snow appeared extremely silent, and Wolf circled under a tree beside the Forbidden Forest. Look at the circle of footprints under the tree to know that he should have waited a lot of time here. Ryan gave a gift after greeting each other, and Wolf said happily after opening the gift. Thank you for the gift I brought to me this far. The purest South American rubber ball. The magic on it is not guaranteed to be accidentally bitten by me like the ones I played recently. And this book of American flora and fauna. Careful. We are friends, and that's what we should do, Ryan said, clearing an open space with magic, and then sitting on a stump to start communicating with Wolf about the latest situation. Do you know, the old bachelor Bane in the Horseman is married, and the bride is Betty. Just the very rough horseman, Ryan said incredulously. He couldn't connect the barbarian with the gentle Aunt Betty. Rough, maybe. But listen to the horseman in the village. When Bane was young, he was the first hunter in the village and the most handsome horseman. At that time, Betty, the most beautiful girl in the village, was enviable. A pair of lovers. Unfortunately, the Ma people admire reproduction. Betty refused Bane's pursuit after being cursed. Since then Bane has not been taking care of herself, letting his hair become messy and his temper is getting worse and worse. But www.mtlnovel.com. At this point, Wolf raised his ears in excitement, which made him look more like a husky. Recently the curse on Betty was lifted, and she agreed to Bane's proposal. I heard them say that it seems to be related to your adventure in Brazil, right? It can only be said that by chance, I killed the dark wizard who cursed Aunt Betty. Ryan replied. No wonder Betty said I'm going to give you a gift for a while. Wolf's wolf face showed a sudden expression of understanding. After Ryan and Wolf had finished talking about Aunt Betty, Hermione also got involved and started talking about the various experiences in Brazil this time, and Wolf also interspersed with some recent events in the forest. Talking about Wolf stopped suddenly, and then twitched his nose hard. What happened? Ryan asked, watching Wolf sniffing curiously around the two. I seem to smell the same kind of breath from you, Wolf said solemnly. Same kind? Ryan remembered at once that Wolf was actually a very special werewolf descendant. The kind of estimate he said was a werewolf. After 2 rounds around Ryan and Hermione, Wolf targeted Hermione with her school bag. What's in your school bag? Wolf said solemnly. Only what is used in class today, Hermione said as she took out the books one by one, and Wolf smelled them one by one. None of the previous books found any problems until Hermione pulled out a notebook with a brown cover that looked very old. Yes, that's the taste of my compatriot on this notebook, Wolf confirmed after sniffing several times. After he finished, he looked up at Hermione. Can you tell me where this notebook comes from? Chapter 215. Hunting Dementors. After Wolf pointed out the smell of a werewolf in this notebook, Hermione seemed to be surprised by Wolf's words, and he didn't speak for a long time. It wasn't until Ryan shook her that she responded and said, this was taken from Lupin, the new professor of Black Magic Defense, because I was worried that I didn't take some of his knowledge in the first half of the school year. Then he asked him questions, and then he lent me this note. Black Magic Defense class? Wolf nodded. This profession really needs to deal with many dark creatures often, and it is normal to encounter werewolves. Maybe he has some of the werewolves' tastes in his own book. Under normal circumstances, no one with a big brain hole could think that Dumbledore would actually hire a werewolf to be a professor in the school. So after hearing Wolf's judgment, Hermione nodded in agreement. Anyway, Lupin is not the kind of villain who likes to bite people, as long as he pays attention to the full moon. So Ryan didn't care about this matter. Besides, it was also Dumbledore's appointment that Lupin came to school as a professor. In this case, if he didn't want to tear his face with old Deng, it would be useless to know that Lupin was a werewolf. Soon they ignored the werewolf topic, and continued to chat about what they learned about the trip, and didn't bid farewell to Wolf, who was reluctant until the quick meal. Because of Sirius's jailbreak this year, the Dementors also left their home in Azkaban to go to Hogwarts as a guard. Ryan has always been very curious about this creature, especially after mastering the magic of life. He really wants to study this strange creature, and this time the Dementor came to Hogwarts just gave him such a chance. 3 nights later, after the curfew, Lane quietly climbed up from the bed and under the protection of the phantom curse he touched the edge of the Forbidden Forest. According to the data collected by Ryan from the twins, the Dementors guarding the entrance of the school are the key target, and there are dozens of Dementors hedgehogs integrated together. It is difficult to solve the problem silently. Ryan just wanted to catch a Dementor and go back to study, and didn't want to mess up. So he chose the Dementors who patrol the Forbidden Forest at night. The most important reason for choosing the Dementors patrolling in the Forbidden Forest is that there are several classmates who work in the Ministry of Magic in the common room. The Dementors patrolling in the Forbidden Forest occasionally disappear 1 or 2. The Ministry of Magic suspected that some powerful creatures in the Forbidden Forest had been killed. If so, it means that even if Ryan catches a few Dementors, it won't attract anyone's attention, because the Dementors walked through will absorb the vitality of the surroundings, which also makes the patrol path in the Forbidden Forest exuding Seeing if there is no breath of death in the sight of the magically modified eagle eye launched by Ryan with life magic. After using life magic to convert his breath, Lane quietly climbed to a tree beside the patrol path and waited for the Dementor to arrive. After a while, the two Dementors floated together from a distance. According to the description of a well-informed classmate, the Ministry of Magic found that only a maximum of 2 teams of Dementors entered the Forbidden Forest after losing the Dementors for many times. So the Dementors squad patrolling here are 2 teams. Of course, this also gave Ryan enough opportunities. After all, if there are too many groups, he can guarantee to beat them, but basically cannot catch the live. When 2 Dementors floated under the tree, Lane could feel the surrounding temperature suddenly became cold, and a mental attack attacked his soul. But under the protection of the Orthodox Taoism, this soul attack had no effect on him. At this time, he seized the opportunity to leap from the 2-story branch, and at the same time held a yellow paper symbol in his hands and launched a palm thunder to the 2 Dementors. After a standard assassination, Ryan fell to the snow and rolled to the side to avoid possible attacks. But when he pulled out his wand and pointed it in the direction of the Dementors, he found that most of the 2 Dementors had melted, and he was hurrying to other places to try to escape. Damn, you can't let them report. Ryan thought of drawing a string of paper from the space bag on his wand subconsciously on the wand. Then he waved the wand and drew a spell out of thin air, pointing at the Dementor. The back of the escape shouted, "Liu Olai." As soon as the sound fell, a little white flame appeared on the rune paper out of thin air, and soon burned the rune paper. Then a silver-white lightning fell from the sky, splitting into 2 strands at the height of the treetops and splitting 2 Dementors who were running away. With 2 squealing sound like a nail scratching a blackboard and 2 waves of negative energy, the 2 Dementors were split into black smoke. Ryan can also feel that the 2 energy clusters filled with negative energy within the scope of his life magic investigation suddenly disappeared. This is the same as he had thought before. Refer really restrained this filthy creature. But the problem now is that this kind of restraint is also too lethal. In actual operation, it will directly destroy the Dementors instead of disabling the Dementors. www.mtlnovel.com. It seems that only alternative solutions can be used. Ryan thought of quickly leaving the first ambush point, jumping on the branch and running towards the second ambush point. The second ambush point was closer to the perimeter of the Forbidden Forest. Ryan judged that once the first ambush failed, then the remaining Dementors will withdraw from the Forbidden Forest at the fastest speed, and the second ambush point he chooses will be able to cut the way from the first ambush point to the road where another group of Dementors will retreat. Sure enough, when Ryan hurried breathlessly to the tree at the second ambush point, it happened to see 2 Dementors hurried over from a distance. This is a major feature of Dementors. Except for a few leaders, most of the Dementors act instinctively. If it is a group, a few Dementors can only act rigidly in accordance with their habits when they act alone, lacking enough the ability to respond to changes. Therefore, when these 2 Dementors retreated, they would only retreat stupidly according to the patrol route, which also gave Ryan the opportunity to ambush. When 2 Dementors floated under the tree, a large red net covered it. Soon the Dementors were in the big net and could not move. Ryan jumped off the tree, picked up the net and threw it into the Wanji grocery store. After throwing 2 very light Dementors and 2 Dementors into the Wanji grocery store, Ryan did not hear the deduction of the offset points of the grocery store, which means that part of his previous guess was correct. The ordinary Dementors but monsters that act instinctively do not have enough wisdom. After harvesting 2 Dementors as trophies, Ryan immediately returned to the castle. After all, his goal has been reached, and the disappearance of 4 Dementors at a time is estimated to be a large-scale search. After a while, Ryan didn't want to run into a large group of monsters. What's more, he is still in a hurry to go back to the safe castle to study Dementors. Chapter 216, Dementors Research. When Ryan returned to the dormitory, everyone in the dormitory was asleep, only Spotted pretending to sleep. But Ryan felt that it didn't matter if he was stabbed to know that he was on a night tour. After all, Gryffindor students, there is nothing strange about night tours. But because of the presence of Spots, Lane did not dare to go to Wanji grocery store at this time. It was not until after the class the next afternoon that he took the opportunity to hide in a bathroom and enter the Wanji grocery store. As soon as he entered the grocery store, Ryan saw that the bundled Dementors were a lot lighter than the black smoke when they were thrown in yesterday, and they also looked weak, as if they were just caught yesterday. Jumping alive. I have to say that this net made of cotton thread soaked in water and rooster blood and pre-enchanted is really a kind of restraint for dark creatures. Disappear. Thinking of here, Ryan quickly assembled a portable altar, and hung a spell with this cotton thread around the altar. He shook a Dementor into the altar from the net. After the Dementors entered the altar, a milky white protective layer was quickly raised around the altar, and then some runes fixed the Dementors in the air. Everything's ready. Ryan first used life magic to try to detect the condition of the Dementors, but the rune that flew out disappeared after hitting its cloak with a grey smoke. Obviously this cloak hindered the magic of Ryan. Its cloak actually has anti-magic detection capabilities. Ryan, who saw this scene, took out the obsidian ceremonial knife that had been harvested in the pyramid temple from the counter next to it and could act on the spirit. According to a fan story read in my previous life, the Dementor's cloak may be a precious magic material, which is very likely from the observation results now. So Ryan waved his wand to summon his hairy crab patron saint and used his mind to protect the soul. The first thing was to cut the Dementor's cloak with an obsidian knife. It's a pity that the cloak turned into a black smoke not far from the Dementor, and at the same time a cloak on the Dementor's body grew up to make up for the part that had just been lost. This should be the same as the clothes when the magic woman transformed into a body part of them. Thinking of Ryan's sudden discovery that it represents the transformation of the mission, the magic woman is okay, stop now. The focus is now on the issue of Dementors. Since the cloak and the Dementor are one, it means that the Dementor is an energy creature, and most of the energy creature's energy can be exhausted. Thinking of here, Ryan commanded the patron saint of hairy crabs to step forward and cut off the Dementor's cloak and wipe it off with his energy. As the patron saint continued to erase the Dementor's robes, the Dementors became weaker and weaker. In the end it was no longer able to condense the robe, revealing the rotten body of the greyish-grey body. This looks really bad. Ryan vomited while waving an obsidian knife to try to get some samples from the Dementors. The blade can feel obvious resistance when cutting into the Dementor body, which means that the Dementor is not a spiritual creature, but has its own body. The process of cutting the samples was smooth, but unfortunately, like the cloak, all the cut samples quickly turned into black smoke. Afterwards, you can see that the demented body slowly grows out the cut part again. However, it may be because the previous consumption is too large. Ryan feels that the Dementor has become more illusory after growing the cut part. Obsidian knife cutting later proved this point. If it felt like it was cutting barbecue, it is now like cutting a pile of cotton wool. Now it can only be studied as a whole. Ryan sighed and began to chant life magic, and soon the runes rushed to the Dementors again. Without the obstruction of the cloak, this time the rune successfully submerged into the Dementor's body and began to transfer various data for Ryan. It's not alive, but it's not dead. This is really a strange creature. Ryan frowned and received the data from the Dementor. But in addition to this conclusion, there seems to be a strange mist on Dementor that is preventing Ryan from obtaining further information. You can only try this trick. Ryan thought of taking a mud pill from the waste bag, which was rubbed from the dust on the tombstone in Jushu's world, and was generally used to communicate yin and yang. After discovering that the Dementors are between yin and yang, he came up with a new way. Lion used rune water to dissolve the mud pill, and then took out a writing brush and dipped in mud water to prepare a spell on Dementor. For safety, Lane first drew several runes on his right arm using the magic ink he had prepared. Unsurprisingly, as soon as his hand penetrated the barrier, he saw the Dementor launch an attack. A powerful suction came from his mouth, as if pulling Ryan's soul down his arm. At this time, the rune on the right arm gave out a golden light suddenly and nailed the Dementor in place. Okay, let me see what secrets you have hidden, Lane murmured in his mouth as he began to draw runes on the Dementors. After drawing more than a dozen runes, Ryan heard a glass-like sound coming from the Dementor's body, and then a large amount of messy information was brought into Ryan's sea of knowledge through the previous runes with black smoke. www.novel.com Soul attack. Is this desperate? Ryan calmly transformed her merits into a barrier to block the black mist, and at the same time filtered out the information mixed in. With the last wave of attacks, the Dementor's body was completely exhausted and turned into black smoke. Ryan ignored the situation on the altar, but closed his eyes and began to sort out the harvest. Just now, Ryan opened his eyes more than half an hour later, and he finally figured out what the Dementor was all about. This monster is actually composed of soul energy and various negative emotions scattered between heaven and earth. Dementors rely on negative emotions to bind these different sources of soul energy together to form a monster between life and death. The reason why Dementors absorb human positive emotions is because pure negative emotions can only make them live as instincts as a beast. Only after absorbing enough positive emotions as a balance can the Dementor's consciousness evolve greatly. In addition to positive emotions, the Dementors also need the soul of intelligent creatures to strengthen the soul body to evolve the soul body, but it is too slow to simply absorb the energy of the soul free in nature, and it takes a lot of time to evolve. This is why the Dementor is eager to put down its hood and the complete soul directly. Only after satisfying these 2 points of evolution, the Dementors can truly complete the evolution into intelligent life. The Dementors who become intelligent life will automatically become the leader of the community. According to the information read from this Dementor, there are more than a dozen leaders in Azkaban. This time there are 2 leaders in the Dementors who came to Hogwarts. Today is a long experience, and I have known a life form that I have never seen before. Ryan thought in the chair behind the counter. Chapter 217, Flesh Puppet. After resting for a while, Ryan picked up another Dementor and imprisoned it on the altar. For this Dementor, Ryan focused his research on how it was born out of a mess of disorderly energy. As for the content of absorbing souls, Ryan does not need to know, because there are several ways to do this in the magic of life. At the same time, it is far more cleverly used than Dementor's instinctive method. After researching the second Dementor, Ryan accidentally discovered that the Dementor's positive emotions were completely attracted by the negative emotions in his body, which also made Ryan, as a human, unable to imitate the Dementors. The reason for this means, because human emotions are attached to the soul, and the soul is under the protection of the flesh. No one will expose his soul. Unlike Dementors, which are directly a soul creature, the soul has been in direct contact with the outside world. In the course of studying the second Dementor, Ryan finally figured out how they aggregated the scattered soul energy between heaven and earth into a complete soul. It is important to know that there are many sources of soul energy scattered between heaven and earth. When some people are alive, they emit energy due to greater spiritual stimulation, and some people remain in the yang world after the soul of the subject enters the soul cycle after death. In short, these soul energies are widespread in most of the world, but this energy does not exist for a long time. If there is no special reason, it will often completely melt in the surrounding natural environment within 24 hours after it is generated. Here, join the cycle of nature. The Dementors are monsters formed by chance, using these energies and a lot of negative emotions. Now after mastering this knowledge, Ryan can finally make flesh puppets. After all, even the weakest flesh puppets in the past required at least a complete intelligent biological soul, and Ryan could only stop the plan before finding a substitute. Now that he has finally broken through the biggest difficulty, Ryan does not intend to procrastinate. He leads directly to the space gate of the radiant world and prepares to make flesh puppets. The radiation world has changed a lot after more than half a year of transformation. At least the luminous sea has been treated by half, which has greatly reduced the frequency of the terrifying radiation rain and nuclear radiation storm, and the wild vegetation coverage has increased. Ryan came out of the underground fortification renovated by Refuge 111. After burying the victims in the previous freezer in the cemetery, the refuge was transformed into an underground command post of the Federal Armed Forces. With the help of tombstone moss, this refuge ushered in a large-scale expansion, now more like a small underground city. When I first came to my office, I saw Preston walking in with a thick stack of documents. "General, you have been away for so long. There are a lot of things that you need to deal with here." So Ryan was soaked in the sea of documents for an entire afternoon, and he didn't deal with everything until 9 o'clock at night. After working overtime, Ryan had dinner with the on-duty staff in the cafeteria. The dishes are now much better than they were 6 months ago. At least for vegetarians, there are a variety of dishes made with fresh vegetables. However, meat dishes still contain only a very small amount of double-head beef and insects of various practices. The only new dish is the fish provided by the Far Harbor that joined the Federation after cleaning up the atomic church. Ryan asked for a mashed potato with vegetable salad and small pieces of fried double-headed beef, and was surprised to find that the taste of beef was much better than when he came last time. "General, everyone is very grateful to you because the plants you brought have greatly enriched everyone's dining table. At least the permanent residents of the federal territory have not starved to death within a month," said Preston sitting opposite. Only then did Ryan know why many of the staff who were eating had peeped at him with admiring eyes from time to time. Early the next morning, Ryan took the lift out of the underground fortification. After walking out of the fortress built on the hill, he found that the nearby shelter town had become a bustling place on the wasteland no less than Diamond City. Ryan was very pleased to see the progress and vitality in these wastes. After leaving the fortress, he first went to the collective cemetery to perform a requisition ritual for the recently deceased, and then gave a speech in memory of those who recently paid their lives for the Federation. People. The magic array placed here really absorbed a lot of souls of the dead and gained souls after they got home, and when the emotions of living people were intense, they exuded soul energy. Later, he used these energies as a primer to obtain enough emotions from human daily life. Because Ryan minimized the absorption efficiency of the magic circle, it did not affect people. It has to be said that knowledge is power. Ryan absorbed more energy in a day through the magic circle than a Dementor can absorb more than 20 years of energy by instinct alone. Simply speaking, from the perspective of energy magnitude, these energies enough to allow 1 or 2 Dementors to evolve. With these valuable gains, Ryan went straight to the academy. In the deepest dedicated laboratory of the academy, he began to make flesh puppets for the first time. www.mtlnovel.com. In theory, any animal can be made into flesh puppets. But after all, this is used for combat, so Ryan chose the creature with more combat effectiveness on the waste soil as a template, such as the death claw that was now placed on the front desk of his face. One morning passed in the transformation. Ryan used the technique of Moshan to kill the dead to embalm this death claw, and then used the technology obtained in this temple to strengthen the body of the Death Claw and use the magic of life. The runestone rune made was buried in the body of Death Claw, and finally he dipped his own blood to start drawing the rune on the surface of the Death Claw. When the last pen is down, the preparation is over. After a lengthy spell and gesture, Ryan pressed his left hand between the 2 corners of the Death Claw and slowly injected the mixture of the power and emotion of the soul that was previously stored in the sea of knowledge into the body of the Death Claw. Ryan chose physical recovery in flesh puppetry. This magic is to revive a corpse into a puppet driven by the caster. The strength of the corpse before it was directly linked to the fighting power after recovery. Unlike the top-level life and death reversal ritual, which completely preserved all the intelligent puppets during life. The puppets produced by this method are less autonomous, and only retain the basic instinct memory. The precise operations during combat require the master's command, but the advantage is that it does not require fresh corpses that have not yet separated from the body, and can be replaced with other souls. And the requirements for the caster are not so high. He chose this method on the one hand because of the low difficulty and high success rate of casting. On the other hand, this puppet is a monster rather than a human, so it is not too low to retain instinctive memory. After the final soul injection, Ryan watched with satisfaction as the death claws on the table moved. Chapter 218, Before the Game. The death paw puppet made successfully. Lane looked at the death claw that was starting to move and thought with delight. But this death claw did not get off the stand as he imagined, but began to tremble, and the amplitude of the tremor became larger and larger over time. Soon the muscles of the death paw began to shrink, and the skin color gradually darkened. But Ryan can feel that this death claw is getting stronger and stronger, which is not the original physical recovery effect at all. But think about the fact that Lion used spells from 3 civilizations on this death claw, and it is understandable that there have been some changes. Finally, death claw stopped shaking, and Ryan also found that he could fully control the flesh puppet in front of him. After giving the order, the death claw jumped from the stage and stood steadily in front of Ryan. The very soft voice on the ground showed that the puppet had no less mastery of his body than when he was alive. It may even be stronger than when he was alive. Seeing this scene, Ryan began to gather around the death excitedly to check. The death claw puppet stood there quietly, covered with a layer of scale armor like obsidian. Ryan stepped forward and squeezed his body. He was surprised to find that although his muscles atrophied, his strength did not decrease but increased. Now it feels closer to the rock than the flesh. Similarly, its claws were strengthened. Ryan took out a dagger made with the death claws and the puppet claws. As a result, the puppet claws only appeared to wipe off white marks, and the death claws daggers was broken out of a soybean-sized mouth. Then Ryan tried some magic spells to make sure that under the dual effect of the runestones and surface runes in the puppet, this puppet's magic resistance is not much different from the adult hybrid race. After using magic to communicate the death claw puppet, Lane discovered that the previous changes were not the biggest surprise. The biggest change in this death claw is that after implanting an artificial second-class soul created by imitating the Dementor's soul structure, it actually mastered some Dementor's abilities. For example, after being injured, as long as the puppet core is not damaged, it can be slowly recovered by absorbing the free energy in the air. But this kind of recovery is not fast. For example, if you lose your front paw, it may take 3 to 5 years to recover by yourself. Another example is that it now has a chance to blur itself for 1 second every day, which can allow him to avoid certain fatal physical attacks. Ryan likes his masterpiece more and more, but unfortunately, due to a series of problems caused by the improvement of combat power after mutation, he can only control 2 death claws at a time at most, which makes him extinguish his dream of forming a puppet army. After spending 3 days creating another death claw puppet and getting familiar with the operation, contented Ryan returned to Hogwarts' bathroom. As soon as he left the bathroom, he was stopped by the Weasley twins. "Where have you just been?" "Hermione has been looking for you in the library," Fred said. "Well, it's a little uncomfortable. I stayed in the toilet for a while," Lane replied and walked to the library with the twins. "By the way, thank you for lending us the notebook and outline textbooks," George said as he walked towards the library. Fred nodded beside him. "Especially if you borrow the key points drawn on our notebook. I think it is more accurate than Percy's note points. I feel that it is much smoother to do similar topics after reading your notes. Seriously, I am not the best in my studies, but when it comes to exams, especially theoretical exams, I think few people in our college can be stronger than me. Of course, if you look at the things you make normally, the magic level is not weak, and I don't dare to tell you at Christmas that I have a way to make you rush to improve your test scores," Ryan said with a shrug. "Thank you anyway," the two brothers said coincidentally. "No thanks, I'm still waiting to invest in your future joke store." After coming to the library, and Ryan only knew what Hermione wanted him to do, Wood had just found her, hoping that she and Ryan would be able to tutor Harry to complete his homework. After all, Ravenclaw and Slytherin had a match yesterday. Slytherin won, but the score was close. This means that the Gryffindor team is still promising this year. So Harry has now increased the training time to 5 times a week. This means that with Lupin's Dementor class, Harry only has 1 night a week to do his homework. Moreover, Lupin's extra class itself is more tiring than 6 Quidditch trainings. In this case, Wood can only ask for help, and the first thing he thought of was the homework support group that had been in the Gryffindor lounge for 4 years. Know that Harry has been in the group occasionally before, so I am worried that he may not be well adapted to our real discussion. After all, he needs to finish a week of homework in a day. The whole group is estimated to be only us 2. It's all about helping, Hermione said with some concern. www.mplenovel.com. At least this is not difficult compared to the difficulties we encountered before. At this point, Ryan quietly blinked at Hermione. Hermione smiled when she saw Ryan's small movements, and then asked directly, What do you think should be done? Harry's class has one more divination less than ours. Counting divination and ancient magic, the other classes are the same. The divination class assignments are purely for editing. We don't need to pay attention to them. We can put other classes before, summarize this week's content, and then give him guidance on the difficulties. Ryan paused for a while and then said, it may be a little tiring to summarize the lessons once a week, but it is also helpful for our own study. And after all, Harry did not have time to write homework for the honor of the college. We help him. Isn't it also equivalent to contributing to the college, which is no different from your efforts to add points to the college? In the classroom, the two of them quickly told Wood that they agreed to help Harry make up the lesson and finish the homework. After hearing the news, Wood smiled a little on the tired face. Thank you very much, otherwise I don't know what to do. At this time, Wood was writing his homework. After all, he and Percy were all in 7th grade and faced the pressure of the NEWT exam. At the same time, in order to become a professional player in the future, he also needs to lead the Gryffindor team to win enough. Under this double pressure, his face looked haggard. It's okay, this is what we should do as a member of Gryffindor, Ryan said, and Hermione also nodded beside her. The following month was very smooth, and Harry received regular tutoring from Ryan and the two of them. In addition to his daily study, Ryan is also silently recuperating his wounds, hoping to heal the wounds he suffered in the battle with the blood earlier. Chapter 219, Competitions and Celebrations. Time unknowingly became February, but the cold weather did not change. But Harry did not calm down while they were coaching at Ryan, but seemed increasingly anxious. After the inquiry, Ryan knew that the distance between Ravenclaw and Ravenclaw was getting closer and closer, so he asked Professor McGonagall about the Firebolt as soon as possible, but Professor McGonagall always said that he had not finished the inspection. I don't think the most important game will be more important than human life, but I think Professor McGonagall is the Dean of Gryffindor. She must also hope that the Gryffindor team will win, so I guess he must be before the game. I can give you the broom. After hearing Ryan's comfort, Harry's face looked better. In addition to Harry's affairs, the spots were better now. Maybe it was a new environment, which made him feel that Sirius could not find him temporarily. This also made Ron very happy. After seeing the spot in the common room one day, he praised Ryan's medicine and decided to let the spot live in Ryan for a while, in order to ensure that Peter will not escape. The red cage is covered with red lines, and the red lines are still hung with jade lightning symbols. However, in the eyes of the roommates, Ryan liked the mouse very much, so the cage was decorated with decorations full of oriental charm. The roommates' comments also caused Peter to misjudge, and he didn't know exactly what these things were on a cage. Sleeping in such a cage is no different from sleeping in a pile of explosives. If Peter knew what this was, he would find a way out of the cage. That is, during a weekend practice in mid-February, Hermione finally summoned her physical patron saint. In the warm room where you can. As the sound of the mantra fell, a gleaming silver otter rushed out of her wand head and jumped around her. It's really pretty, isn't it? Hermione looked at it with joy and said, it's really fluffy and cute. Ryan nodded and reminded seriously, the next step is to work hard in the actual direction. After all, the Guardian Curse is used to deal with Dementors. After all, in a safe and bright room, release the Guardian Deity. It's not the same thing as real combat. Looking at Hermione's serious nod, Ryan asked a recently discovered question with some curiosity. Why do you think that after you returned to Hogwarts, the evasion during these few exercises was much faster than before? Because Ryan felt that Hermione's skill was advancing rapidly in these practice exercises. At least now, in addition to poor experience in physical surgery, it is close to the feeling of a novice assassin who has been training in the memory for a year. You know that Hermione has only practiced the assassin's physical heritage for less than a year, and she just has time to practice. According to common sense, it should not be the current level anyway. I don't know, but I guess it might be the power of the gift in the bloodline I got last time. We took the risk, because since that time, I found that my physical condition is much better than before. You teach me many of the movements in that set of exercises that could not be done before can now be done suddenly. Hermione replied after thinking about it. Ryan also checked his body after hearing this answer, and found that the last bloodline gift would indeed slowly improve the recipient's physique. However, because he had received multiple enhancements before, the gift-giving effect was not as obvious as it was on Hermione, so he was naturally ignored by him. Maybe some of this gift is the same as the blood of Ryan Bull. The book Where is the Magical Animal does not say that anyone who drinks the blood of Ryan Bull will increase his strength. I think the gift is similar. Ryan found Hermione a little uneasy after hearing his inquiry, and quickly comforted her with a realistic example. Because Ryan recently went out to learn all kinds of knowledge, but also to help Harry and the twins review their homework. So he felt a bit confused. When Harry held his fire crossbow arrow with Ron one day to celebrate him in the common room this Saturday, that is, tomorrow he will use this broom to participate in the game, Ryan suddenly realized that this year's second Quidditch horse immediately it's about to start. Early the next morning, Harry caused a sensation while having his firebolt in the school hall for breakfast. Except for Slytherin students, Students from other colleges squeezed over to try to get close to this legendary broom. This broom is worthy of legend, especially when the person who owns the broom is on the extremely talented Harry Potter. The game started at 11 o'clock, and it was found that Firebolt's speed, climb rate and turning radius were much better than others under Harry's control, especially as Janku, a Ravenclaw seeker. She couldn't catch up with Harry on the comet. Finally, Harry shot a blurry half-shaped silver flesh guardian deity in one direction, and then grabbed the golden thief to end the game. I really didn't expect Slytherin to try to influence Harry by disguising as a Dementor. www.mtlnovel.com. I really can't see where their self-proclaimed noble lineage is. After the victory of the game, everyone returned to the public. The lounge began to celebrate. After participating in the celebration for a while, Ryan and Hermione, who did not like the noise, sat in a corner of the common room. Hermione didn't understand the methods Malfoy used today. The shadows behind the nobles are much more than those of us ordinary people. After all, they need to keep so many interests. It is not easy to achieve by normal means alone. I am surprised that Malfoy's means are so rough. It is not like it should be. Some elite educators. Hermione was a little surprised when he heard Ryan's answer. After all, Britain was not like the motherland of Ryan II, who had swept these decaying nobles into the historical garbage dump and revealed their dark side cleanly. In the minds of ordinary British people, nobles are noble and moral role models. In Hermione's ideas, a pureblood family like Malfoy, who controlled a large number of resources, should be like the British nobility, even if the hostility is full of gentlemanly deeds. But now, as soon as Ryan said, she found out that whether Malfoy made a whistle blow at midnight duel in the first grade, scolded Clivi with mud in the second grade, or made a move in front of Buckbeak this year, as well as the small movements on the Quidditch scene, it fully shows that at least a part of the members of the pureblood family, such as Draco Malfoy, not only lack the sense of nobility they deserve, they are even closer to street gangsters in the world. Okay, I think I made a mistake. Hermione very straightforwardly admitted that she had made a mistake in understanding certain issues. After discussing this issue, Ryan took out the book and began to summarize the key points in the textbooks of each homework. Hermione also took out the textbooks to do her homework in ancient magic texts. Chapter 220, Break In and Fight. While Ryan was writing something, a bottle of butterbeer was placed on the table in front of him. Raising his head, Ryan saw Fred looking at him with a smile, and George was throwing toad mints at the crowd. The two of you are really strange. Why are you still studying here while celebrating? Fred asked. It's not because you're two brothers and Harry. I am not only busy with my own business, but also give you 3 lesson preparations. You need a lot of time to train for the game, and since we promised to help you, it's not necessary to spend more time. Preparation will try to let you master more knowledge in a short period of time. Don't forget that you still have 1 game after this game. Do you not need to prepare? This is really bothering you. Thank you, Fred said, scratching his head. But you can try butterbeer. It tastes really good and has no alcohol. After making the preparations almost the same, Ryan and they joined the celebration. It wasn't until 1 o'clock in the morning that Professor McGonagall, wearing a plaid dressing gown and a hairnet, came to the scene and insisted that everyone go to bed, at which time the party at the Gryffindor house ended. After everyone went to bed, Ryan sneaked out of the dormitory to the common room, and then chose to meditate in the corner on the back of the sofa. Because he knew that Black was likely to come to attack tonight, he planned to wait for Black here. After more than an hour of meditation, a slight friction sound came from the entrance. Then a figure came in from the entrance. Moonlight shone on the man's face through the common room window, and Ryan saw a thin body like a skeleton. There was a mess of hair on his head, which looked very dirty. The most important thing is to have a knife in your hand. It seems that Sirius Black's recent life is very bad. After confirming that Black has no wand, Ryan runs the Zixia magical power and jumps out of the back of the sofa. Who is it? Before you even spoke, Blake rushed up and raised her right hand, and then reversed the knife on her hand to try to knock Ryan with the handle. It seems that at least Black is not a bad guy, and he will remember not to hurt the innocent at this time. While thinking about Ryan flashing Sirius's fight, he then hit the point on the back of his neck. Probably because of the long running and starvation draining his physical strength, Black failed to avoid this blow. He fell directly to the ground. Fortunately, there was a thick carpet on the ground to absorb the sound of him falling to the ground. After a muffled heavy object fell to the ground, the common room was still quiet. Ryan pulled out an enchanted rope and tied it to Black, then used his wand to read to him, "Recover quickly." Obviously the spell woke Black, but he still pretended to be unconscious and tried to fight back. "Mr. Black, you don't have to pretend to be unconscious. As a friend of Harry, I have to ask you something. Can you tell me why you want to kill Harry?" "No, I haven't." Sirius widened his eyes sharply, and then the blood vessel roots in his hand burst out. "I'm here to kill that bastard that is still alive. I'm going to kill him." "Kill him?" Sirius's speech was incoherent, but he didn't want to wake up other people, so even if it was a roar, try to keep his voice down. After a little excitement, Sirius calmed down and looked at Ryan. "You should be Ryan Liang, right? Can you tell me why you think I might not be the murderer?" "Wait, How do you know who I am? Lane remembered that he didn't introduce himself at all. I picked up a lot of waste newspapers in Hogsmeade, and there are photos of you getting the Merlin Medal of the 2nd grade. Seriously, your Asian face is so easy to recognize. The whole Gryphon is yours. Asian boys. Then why do you think I don't think you are a murderer? Because you were merciful just now. You didn't go out to call people. Sure enough, I was still inexperienced. Ryan simply said half-truth. Since you have seen me in the newspaper, you should know that I am a hemp wizard. I sometimes read a lot of information about the magic world to understand this world, and your case is in an old newspaper that I have read. From my Mull world point of view, a case like you that's sentenced directly without trial is really too doubtful. Besides, I learned from Hagrid that you gave Harry to Hagrid after the death of your parents. If you really want to kill Harry, then it will be fine. So I found out that the first reaction after you came in was to ask what are you doing here? Ryan told Sirius the reason he had previously thought about. You are very courageous and worthy of being a Gryffindor. Sirius glanced at Ryan and said, yes, I am Harry's godfather. I and his father are like brothers. I will never hurt him. What I want to kill is the real traitor Peter Dwarf. www.mplnovel.com. It was because I gave him the opportunity to betray the Potters to Voldemort. I just came out because I saw him in the newspaper. Look for him. Sirius pressed his throat in a hoarse voice. Of course my luck is also good. When I arrived at the door today, I found a note outside the door with a full week's passcode, so I can come in smoothly. Is Neville cursed? Even Crookshanks would throw things away from him. Ryan thought. It is estimated that everyone was a bit confused when entering the door when celebrating today. Neville throws his notes. Now, Ryan was thinking about these things and saw Sirius staring at him all the time. So he opened his mouth and shocked him with the news. Is the spot you said now a mouse with a finger missing its front paw? You, how do you know? Sirius looked at Ryan in surprise. You just said that you can see him in the newspaper. But in theory he should be dead and can't appear in the newspaper. Then the only explanation is that when he appeared at the time, he didn't look human, so he could hide in Gryffindor. In the tower, it is only possible to pretend to be someone else's pet. The owls in the school will go to the owl room, and the only suspicious thing in the remaining pets is that Ron pleases me to take care of his pets. It has been able to live normal mice several times. The life ordinary house rats. This year's inexplicable starting state has become very bad. If you know the result in turn, the reasoning process is still very simple. But I don't know that Sirius is obviously shocked. Smart boy, I would even wonder if you should go to Ravenclaw. You just said that Peter the little dwarf is with you. Hurry up and let him kill me. Sirius looked excitedly, said. Chapter 221, Communication with Sirius. Wait, you said you were going to kill him here? Ryan asked in shock. Of course, would you still let your child do it? Hurry up and take him out. Yes, this is the common room, which is a bit inappropriate here. But I can take Peter out to kill. Sirius urged. I mean, after you kill Peter, do you continue to escape as a fugitive? As far as I know, Harry hasn't been very good with his relatives. You as his only relative now not only treat him staying with relatives has been suffering for more than 10 years, and you have to escape your responsibility as his godfather to take care of him. No, I didn't escape responsibility, Sirius retorted excitedly. I was just atonement before, and I am wrong to see the wrong person killing my friend. Then, I feel a sense of conscience when I am atoned in prison, and suffer by putting my friend's only child outside. Ryan's sarcasm mercilessly. Because he discovered that Peter had become Black's demon, he could only hope to get rid of this kind of demon through such words. After all, the original Black is a good person, and if he is capable, Ryan naturally tends to pull him. Not to mention that being a good person will naturally reward you after receiving help from others. Watching Black start to fall into contemplation after listening, Ryan quickly went further and said, you just feel that you can't face the orphans of your friends and don't know what to do to escape. If you really want to atone for it, shouldn't it be the responsibility of friends to take care of their orphans instead of their friends? Well, I think you may be right. After a few minutes of death-like silence, Sirius said with his mouth open. I do look like a coward who dare not face the reality, but then I don't know what to do next. It's simple. You just said that I thought of a way. After Ryan told Black his plan, he nodded and said, you should leave now. After all, this is the school. You may be found at any time. Untwisting the rope, Black stood there and looked bitterly at the boys' dormitory. When Ryan thought he was going to break the agreement and rushed up, he turned his head hard and walked towards the exit. Suddenly asked when he was about to enter the exit hole, what are you doing in the common room late at night? Lane blurted out, Kung Fu. Sirius didn't say anything when he heard the answer, and went straight out of the hole. In fact, Sirius was wondering why Ryan would be waiting in the common room just in the early hours of the morning. But Ryan's Kung Fu mistakenly answered by mistake. After all, Sirius likes Muzz very much during the rebellion period, and the flying motorcycle is a masterpiece at that time. So he also watched the first Kung Fu movie that came to the West. Just now Ryan's ability to directly flip Sirius was obviously stronger than the normal 13-year-old boy, and he happened to be a heavenly man. So in Sirius brain supplementation, Ryan obviously has practiced kung fu. As for why I ran to the common room in the early morning to practice this situation, it is not difficult for Sirius, who is from a pure-blood family, to understand. People who master certain special skills avoid everyone secretly practicing. Is it not a routine operation? And Ryan's answer just matched his brain filling, so he lifted his inner doubts and left without a word. However, Ryan didn't know what Sirius was thinking. He thought it might be because Sirius had been in a prison for a long time and was a bit mentally abnormal, so he asked some strange questions. Just a few hours after he went back to sleep, Professor McGonagall came to the common room at 5 o'clock in the morning to wake everyone up. Everyone was standing in the common room in pajamas sleepily. "I'm sorry to wake you up so early, but according to the description of the portrait in the castle, Sirius broke into the school and entered the Gryffindor common room yesterday, so I hope everyone will cooperate with the search of the castle today. By the way, Neville Longbottom, come with me now." Looking at Longbottom following Professor McGonagall, Lane silently prayed for him in his heart. After Professor McGonagall left, everyone hurried upstairs and after washing, they all wore coats and waited in the common room. However, it was known that when they went to class, there was no news. Professor McGonagall regretted to inform them that Sirius had fled when eating at noon. After returning to the dormitory, Ryan found that the paper notes attached to the cage before he went downstairs had not been passive. Spotted still sleeping peacefully in the cage. This sacred rune attached to the cage was prepared to make Peter fall asleep and avoid the search that caused Peter's vigilance. Neville came back at dinner, and Professor McGonagall was very angry about the consequences of Sirius entering the common room because he lost the note. Although there were no serious consequences this time, McGonagall was not allowed to go to Hogsmeade in the future. He was locked up and no one was allowed to give him the password to enter the tower. He recently had to wait at the door every day and ask others to bring him in. In addition, Neville also received a roaring letter from his grandmother. Even when he was reminded by Ron to run out the first time he got the letter, everyone in the auditorium heard the roar of Neville's grandmother condemning Neville for bringing shame to the whole family. "Ryan, will you be able to accompany me to Hagrid later?" Hermione asked and sat next to Ryan with a few books at this time. "Of course, but can you tell me why you are going to Hagrid?" "As a friend, I took some time to help Hagrid to check some defense materials about the magical creature injury case. But I also know that the probability that Hagrid will win this time is very small, so I want to find someone to accompany me. Otherwise I will be a little embarrassed." "Okay, you will wait for me in the entrance hall for a while, and I will go with you after I go to the dormitory to pick up something." Lane was worried that there was no excuse to go to Hagrid, and now he finally found an excuse. www.mplnovel.com 10 minutes later, Hermione saw Ryan walking down the stairs carrying the mouse cage in the hall. Her eyebrows twitched sharply as she glanced at the jade charms on the red rope that wrapped around the cage. But she went to Hagrid's cabin with Ryan without saying anything. Reaching the cabin, Ryan knocked on the door, and Hagrid quickly opened the door for them. "Welcome, you are here." "That's it. I heard that you are going to London to defend Buckbeak on Friday, so we have summarized some information and hope it will be useful." Hermione said to Hagrid as she took the information. "Thank you so much. You can come in and have some tea." Hagrid let the door open. The first thing they saw when they entered the door was Buckbeak lying on Hagrid's patch sheet, with huge wings folded tightly around his body, squinting and napping. Ryan and Hermione consciously chose to sit away from Buckbeak. Hagrid first poured 2 cups of tea for them and brought out a plate of cookies. After receiving the data marked by Hermione, she looked at it. In the crackle of the fire, Ryan picked up the teacup and silently drank tea. After seeing Brother Hire read the marked 7 or 8 pages of information, he said happily, "The information you are looking for is really useful. I think Buckbeak it is possible to win now." Ryan looked at Hagrid's excitement and thought it was better not to splash cold water, so he put down the teacup and said, "Because we only came back after the Christmas holiday, we didn't have much information. But really, it's estimated to be dangerous in that situation. The biological committee may not give you too much time for debate, so I think you just need to pick 1 or 2 of the cases to get acquainted." "Thank you so much," Hagrid said gratefully. "After all, I know that you have been busy recently, and you have taken the time to help me, which has made me very grateful." Chapter 222, Analysis and Layout. After talking about Buckbeak, Hagrid saw the cage in Ryan's hand and asked, "What's wrong with your mouse?" "Oh, this is Ron's pet," Ryan said as he opened the cage and handed the spot to Hagrid. "This mouse feels much thinner than before and has a lot of energy. I recently used some methods to treat it, but it only prevented the rapid deterioration of the condition of this rat, but there is still no way to cure it. Only the people I know about these animals, so I want to find you a way." "Let me see." After talking about Hagrid's big hand, he took the spot. It seems that he had suffered a lot of injuries before, Hyde said, stroking the spotted head and claws with his hand. "It has been torn, and there is a missing paw in the front paw." "Oh, how old is this mouse?" Hagrid asked Ryan after the inspection. "As far as I know, this is Percy's previous pet. It should be 7 or 8 years." Lane said uncertainly. 7 or 8 years? What a miracle. You must know that this ordinary mouse can only live for 3 years in most cases. However, There are always exceptions to everything. Maybe this mouse is the exception. But even if it lived longer than normal mice, it should be the end of life now. So I personally suggest that you feed it something like absinthe. Although this is not good for mice, it will at least make it more comfortable for the last time. Hagrid finally concluded. Well, thank you. Ryan put the spot back in the cage again, and after discussing which case to use as the focus for a while, Ryan and Hermione quit and left Hagrid's hut. When they returned to the common room, Hermione suddenly said to Lane, "You go up and put the cage first. I have something to tell you." Ryan nodded and quickly put the cage back in the common room. He found Hermione sitting in a corner waiting for him. As soon as he sat in the seat opposite Hermione, Hermione asked him, "What is Weasley's mouse? How do you see it wrong?" Ryan asked, "Others may think that what is wrapped in your cage is just an exotic decoration, but I have seen you use the beautiful little stones with strange runes carved in the temple to easily burn those zombies to ashes. For a terrible zombie, you only need one stone. I don't think it's a normal rat that needs to be wrapped around a dozen stones outside the cage." "Okay, you watched carefully. What I want to tell you is that I suspect that the mouse may be a wizard." "What?" Hermione didn't control the volume, and several classmates in the common room turned to look at her. She quickly lowered the volume and asked, "Why do you think so?" "In fact, it was just an accident." Ryan said what he had prefabricated. "You know, I have some magic that I can't learn in school. I used hypnotic magic for the soul when I got the spot on the first day, and it fell asleep directly. Hypnological magic makes it fall asleep, which is normal." Hermione said, a little puzzled. "But the problem is that it is aimed at the human soul. In theory, animals should not fall asleep," Ryan explained. "I have experimented with similar magic several times since then, and the final conclusion is that this mouse should be human." Watching Hermione open her mouth in shock, Ryan paused and said, "Going to Hagrid today is even more certain that a normal mouse that is not a magical animal has lived for so long, which is not normal. So that mouse might be a wizard's change? Allowing you to live like a mouse for several years means that the wizard cannot disclose his identity. In this case, there is a high probability that criminals in the wizarding world will use this method. Hide yourself." "God, what shall we do now?" Hermione said nervously. "I even have a skeptical goal about who the mouse is, but I have to ask someone to be sure." Ryan looked at the common room after speaking, and then shouted to a tall red-haired boy, "Percy Sr., I have a question here for you." Percy soon ended the ongoing conversation and came over. "Hi, Ryan." "Hermione, what are you doing here?" "We're discussing a question." "You knows that Ron's mouse was treated here recently." "We found some, unusual things," Lane replied. "That mouse? It used to be my pet before." "I can answer some questions for you," Percy said. "It used to be your pet? That's great. I want to know when the pet arrived at your house. What did it look like when you first arrived at your house?" "Well, that pet was first brought back by my father. It was first given to our big brother Bill, and then to me when I was in school. When I got a new owl, I gave it to my younger brother Ron. Counting it has been living in our house for 12 years. Oh my god, I have lived for so long. www.mtlnovel.com. I didn't notice it." Percy also thought about this situation after careful recall, a little shocked. "As for the appearance of our house, my father picked up a mouse in the garden of our house that day. I remember clearly that this mouse has an ear injury and a missing paw in the front paw. Now I want to come unexpectedly. This mouse, which looked like a wound, actually lived for so long," Percy finally said. Ryan and Hermione glanced at each other, and they both saw a surprise in each other's eyes. It's just that Hermione was really surprised and Ryan pretended. Percy also found out that the situation was wrong from the expression of the two people, and asked, "What problem did you find on the spot?" The mouse in your family may be a human," Hermione said. "How is it possible?" Percy looked incredulous. "This is true," Ryan said, "because we were spotted when we went to Hagrid today. He told me that a normal house mouse like this has a normal lifespan of only 3 years. Then, that might also be that our mice live longer," Percy said in a shocked stammer. "Longevity can be said to be normal for a year or two, but the quadruple life is a bit abnormal. According to human comparison, the age of the spotted spot is quite similar to that of the Nicole in mice, but it does not have magic stones and eternal potions." He minutes added. Percy's complexion began to look ugly. After all, normal people knew they were sleeping with a stranger for a few years and their complexion was not much better. Ryan went on to say, "At this time, and based on what Percy Sr. just said, I already guessed who the mouse is." "Who?" Percy and Hermione said in unison. "Peter Pettigrew, the man who was supposed to have been killed by Sirius Black." Chapter 223, Turn in the Mouse. "How is it possible?" "Impossible," Percy and Hermione said at the same time. "Don't you say that Peter Pettigrew has been killed by Sirius Black?" Hermione said. "So he needs to turn into a mouse to hide himself, because in theory he is dead. And after Sirius broke into the school, I specifically checked the old newspaper on this matter, which reported that Sirius was not. It was put into prison directly after the trial, which means that what happened at that time cannot be confirmed 100%. It's just." Hermione looked angry. "Even the fierce criminal must be sentenced after trial. How can the wizarding world do this?" "There are other reasons," Percy said awkwardly. "Because the mysterious man was just defeated at that time, Everyone's emotions need to be released, and sometimes the procedure may not be so strict. Not to mention my father said that Sirius did not request interrogation at all after he was arrested, so at that time he was sent directly to prison. I really don't know what people should say. Hermione mumbled and sat there against the sofa with her arms around her chest. Percy turned to Ryan at this time. Only these 2 points can't be sure that it is Peter. Do you have any other evidence? Of course there is. It has a missing toe, and the biggest piece of Peter that people found after Peter's death was his finger. Percy seemed to be convinced by Ryan. Ryan saw this and hit the iron while he was hot. Other than that, did you find that the spotted anxiety time is exactly the time when Sirius escaped from prison? It seems so, Percy said after recalling. So what shall we do now? Report Professor immediately. It seems that this situation has made Percy a bit messy. Personally suggest that you better send an owl to your father and ask him to come to school. After all, your father is a staff member of the Ministry of Magic, and a suspicious person stays in your home for a long time. I think it may affect your father once it is confirmed. Disadvantages, you better discuss it. Yeah, you're right. Percy reacted at once and took Ryan's hand tightly. I should have ignored this and it's too bad. I'll write to my father now. After Percy walked away, Hermione asked strangely, now that we have determined that the mouse has a problem, why don't we just send the suspicious mouse to the professor? Should Percy be included? On the one hand, the Weasleys are good people. If we send the mouse, it is easy to bring some trouble to their family. Just like I said, it is not a good thing to contain a suspicious person. On the other hand, I guess there were many people who handled this case, and the Weasley family was also one of the 28 pureblood families. They should be able to settle the people involved in those years, but if they are replaced by us, it will be hard to say. What you said makes sense. Hermione nodded slightly. Not to mention that we can leave Percy with a favor. After all, our dream needs enough people to support it, and it is naturally the best that Percy, who is destined to enter the Ministry of Magic, can help us naturally. Having said that, Hermione glanced at Ryan. Do you think my thoughts are a bit utilitarian? No, you just grew up. Ryan shook his head and said, oh, this old father's tone again. Hermione patted Ryan's back playfully. After joking for a while, the two entered the learning mode again. For the rest of the day, Ryan was still the same as in peace. The only difference was that 3 safety signs were added to the cage before going to bed to prevent Peter from escaping at night. When Ryan got up and packed up the next morning and was about to go to breakfast, he saw Percy came over and said quietly to him, Ryan, everyone is waiting in the principal's room now. Ryan nodded and went upstairs to fetch the cage. At this time, he had no need to hide. While Peter was still under the influence of the tranquilizer spell, he slipped his wand directly into the cage and released Peter's coma. After packing his things in the cage, Lane went downstairs and went to the principal's office with Percy. On the way, Ryan said to Percy, yes, after entering, you said that these doubts were mainly found by you. Try not to mention me as much as possible. Why, this is clearly what you discovered. Percy said somewhat puzzled. On the one hand, I have a good relationship with your 2 twin brothers. I can feel that your family is a good person. I don't want your father to be implicated because of this. I think if you make a contribution, your father doesn't need to bear much responsible. Ryan smiled at Percy, and looked at Percy in a disturbed manner. Also, if it is really Peter, it may involve a lot of officials of the Ministry of Magic related to the Sirius trial. You have to know that I am a hemp wizard, but I can offend so many people in one breath. Percy stopped and looked at Ryan very seriously at this time and said, thank you. You will be my best friend in the future. Afterwards, the two walked silently through the hallway without a portrait to the door of the principal's room. Heap of cockroaches. After reading the password, the stone stairs slowly turned upward. Lane came to Professor Dumbledore's office again. It's just that this time is different from when I came with my notebook last time. www.mplnovel.com. There are many people in the office. In addition to Professor Dumbledore and the Weasley couple, Professor Lupin, Professor Snape, Professor McGonagall and a wide-bodied, square-jawed chin that he did not know were sitting in the office. Middle-aged witch with short grey hair and a pair of monocles. My father said he would call an official from the Ministry of Magic as a witness. I really didn't expect that he could call the director of the Law Enforcement Department. Percy introduced in a small voice. Amelia Burns. After listening to Percy's introduction, Ryan finally knew who this unknown person was. It's also reasonable to be able to invite this person. After all, Amelia Burns' brother Edgar Burns is one of the founders of the Phoenix Society, and his family was killed by Voldemort. With such a relationship, it would not be too difficult to move her if it was to deal with Voldemort's case. Okay, 2 boys, can you tell me why you think this mouse is the dead Peter Pettigrew? Dumbledore said seriously, sitting behind the table. When Ron gave me this mouse and asked me to help the doctor see it, I was curious to ask how old this mouse is. Here, later, when I had the opportunity to ask Percy yesterday, he told me that the mouse had been in his house for 12 years. I said that this kind of mouse had a theoretical lifespan of about 3 years in theory. At that time, Percy was a little surprised. I don't know much about the rest. Until this morning he told me to come here with a cage in his hand. Ryan first said the lines he had discussed. Then Percy said all the questions raised yesterday. After listening to Percy's words, Principal Dumbledore motioned Professor Lupin and Professor McGonagall to step forward to check the spots in the cage. Chapter 224, Interrogation. Because Ryan actually kept his hand when he cast the coma curse. After all, he was worried that if he became a mouse, if the defense power was as low as the mouse, the coma curse would kill him. So when Lupin pulled out the spot from the cage, it had already awakened. During the process of grasping it, Professor Lupin screamed and twisted constantly, and small black eyes bulged out. It was struggling to escape with all its strength. Everyone in this office saw that the mouse was not normal. McGonagall and Lupin examined each other and got together to discuss it and said, "We are sure that this mouse is an animagus." "Well, please change this mouse back to the prototype," Dumbledore said to the spot, but unfortunately the spot was unmoved, and even quickly ran to the door after Lupin put it down. But how could so many wizards in the house let him escape? Soon the spots were suspended in the air by Mr. Weasley. "It seems that we can only take a forced approach." After that Dumbledore nodded slightly to Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall's wand gave blue and white light to the spot. The spot was suspended in midair, and the small black body twisted frantically. Soon it fell from midair and fell to the floor. Another dazzling flash of light, and then it was like the fast-moving arrow of the plant growing in the documentary. A head appeared on the ground, limbs also stretched out. After a while, a man stood where the spot was. This is a short man about as tall as Lane. He was bald like a Mr. Weasley, and his light-colored hair looked messy. The whole person looks like an obese person after losing weight quickly. The skin has a lot of wrinkles, and at the same time it looks very dirty, almost similar to the spotty fur. The sharp nose and watery eyes also have the characteristics of a mouse. He looked at a group of people in the office, breathless and weak. "Oh, hello, Peter," Professor Lupin said the first time, as if he hadn't seen him transform before. "It's been a long time, Professor McGonagall, Principal Dumbledore, and Lupin." Peter's voice was sharp, his eyes constantly glancing at the exit of the principal's office. "My professors and my friends. Peter, we are here to ask why you have been a mouse for 12 years. Dumbledore lowered his head and looked at Peter through his half-moon-shaped eyes, while asking in a very harsh tone. Because I want to escape Sirius Hunt. Yes, I evade the pursuit. I think he will come to kill me someday." Peter stammered. "I don't think an innocent person will hide so treacherously for 12 years, let alone how do you know Sirius will escape from Azkaban?" "Know that no one will ever escape from there," Professor Lupin was on the side asked. I'm just scared. After all, Sirius should have learned from that person an unprecedentedly powerful evil magic." Peter stumblingly defended, "If his eyes were not scrutinizing like a mouse, believe it." "No, this is unreasonable. At that time, we had a lot of tainted witnesses, and some even gave a lot of Death Eaters. But they all lived to the present day under the protection of the Ministry of Magic. You as an offense are only ordinary for Sirius people, have been hiding for 12 years after Sirius was arrested. The reason you just said is not credible," Amelia Burns said, holding her monocle. "Not to mention that you were able to come to the Ministry of Magic for asylum for a week, especially if you could turn into a mouse. Sirius could not stop you. But you did not, but chose to be alone and Sirius. After a week of fleeing, he died in a strange explosion in disguise to this day. This is not at all compatible with what you just said about your fear." Amelia Burns, as the director of the Enforcement Department of Magical Laws, was really experienced in interrogation, and at one point pierced Peter's lies on key issues. Her questioning also caused Peter to completely lose square. I wanted to revenge for Lily and James at that time, so I would find him alone. After all, in the Ministry of Magic judgment, no matter how fierce the criminal was, it was only Azkaban's life imprisonment. I know Sirius must have learned from that person. With the evil magic, Azkaban couldn't punish him at all, so I am going to kill him," Peter said more and more smoothly, as if this was the case, but everyone on the scene had found something wrong. "If that's the case, why should you avoid it for 12 years? If you say you should stand in front of the people in a fair and honest way, even if Black escapes, you can wait for Black to avenge Lily and James when he comes to the door. And you just said that you are avoiding Black, so you are lying now," Lupin said coldly at this time, because he had already guessed the truth of certain things. "We don't have to listen to this guy make up a lie here. I have a bottle of potent verite serum in my office. Just 3 drops will tell him everything." "What do you think, Miss Burns?" Professor Snape, disgusted by Peter's fabrication of lies there, he slowly expressed his idea. "Well, this involves a very bad murder case more than a decade ago, so I approved the use of the truth-treating agent as the director of the Enforcement Department of Magic Law. By the way, Principal Dumbledore, I want to borrow you as an official interrogation in your office. After all, there are 2 Wisengama members here, and there are also 5 adult observers next to it. www.mtlnovel.com just meets the minimum requirements for a legal interrogation." Amelia Burns thought about it like Professor Dumbledore asked. "Of course." Principal Dumbledore nodded. "I also want to know what happened that year." No, I'm just a suspect." "You don't have solid evidence and you can't give me the truth." Peter struggled hard, but Professor McGonagall waved his wand and fixed Peter there. There was silence for a few minutes in the office, and there was another noise of friction on the spiral staircase. Professor Snape came back with his authentic agent. "Thank you, Severus." Dumbledore turned from behind the table and took a bottle of truth-clearing water. Then he waved his wand and forcibly opened Peter's mouth and poured 3 drops of potion. Peter started struggling for a while, but soon the whole person stood there in silence. Amelia Burns took out a strange instrument made of brass and crystal and pointed it at Peter. Then she took out parchment and feather pen. "I need someone to record it when I inquire later." "I'm coming," Percy replied nervously. Burns glanced at him, and Mr. Weasley next to him replied, "He is my son and the chairman of the student union. He will definitely help you to record this trial completely." "Then please." Burns waved his wand, and the paper and pen flew away like Percy. Percy, who took the paper and the pen, was a little excited. Ryan watched him try to put the parchment on his thigh to record, and then smoothly turned the cushion on the back of his chair into a board and handed it to Percy. "Transfiguration is very good," Professor McGonagall praised. Ryan hadn't had time to answer, and the interrogation of Director Bowens began. Everyone's attention was drawn to him. Chapter 225, Rehabilitate. In the principal's office, a short middle-aged man stood in the middle of the office, surrounded by a group of people. "Well, Peter, tell me what happened in the past?" Secretary Bowens asked her question. Peter shuddered and took a deep breath, then spoke in the flat tone without emotion. "Because Sirius gave me the identity of the Potter's secret person for safety, and he declared that he was the secret person and led the chase. I found the Dark Lord immediately after becoming the secret person, and put the secret about the Potter family. Told him that I could get an unprecedented reward for this, but the Dark Lord missed it. Black later pursued and killed me after learning that I had betrayed the Potter and his wife." Hearing this, Lupin looked a little excited, and he felt like he would rush to beat Peter. But Mr. Weasley next to him caught him. Ryan turned his gaze to Professor Snape. It turned out that although Professor Snape looked calm, his clenched fists and slightly trembling body explained his current anger. Peter took another deep breath at this time and continued to speak in a flat voice. "I couldn't escape when I was chased into Emil Street at that time, so I could only blow up half a street and then turned into a mouse to escape along the blasted sewer. Then I was a pet in a wizarding family. To today." After listening to this sentence, Mr. Weasley covered his face in annoyance. "Oh my god, when I picked him up in the garden, I really thought it was just a mouse, and I swear I would never mess with these messes again. Take things home." Mrs. Weasley next to him patted his back and comforted him. "Since you have taken refuge in the mysterious man, why haven't you and Harry lived in a house that hurt him in recent years?" Director Bowens asked an important point that everyone cared about. It was completely quiet and started listening. "Because the Dark Lord had heard that the situation was terrible after he failed to kill Harry that day. So I hurt Harry at this time and would also put myself in. So I can only quietly stay in a wizard's family to listen to intelligence. I will only dedicate Harry to the Dark Lord after the Dark Lord has really made a comeback. After all, my mistakes have made many Death Eaters resentful of me. Only by making enough merits can I keep myself in front of the Dark Lord." "Why would you betray Potter and Lily? They took you as a friend." At this time, Lupin finally asked out. Burns frowned at the behavior that interrupted her interrogation, and said nothing. "Friends? Do you really treat me as a friend?" At this time Peter's tone fluctuated, and it seemed that this stimulated him a lot. "Potter and Black are from noble pure-blood families. You study well in school. It's also the class leader. Only I am nothing and follow you like a small classmate. You always say that my courage is too small, even if I try hard to integrate into a small group, but you have always ignored me. No matter what I am, whatever you say will be ignored. But that's not the reason you made the Potters pay the price of their lives." Lupin said a little puzzled. "Why not? After graduation, you didn't ask me. I took the hands of the Dark Lord and went down to fight. The first battle was when the Dark Lord arrived. 2 arrows fell down with a wave. Fortunately that time the Dark Lord didn't continue chasing us before we escaped. After the battle, you were very excited, but I was really scared. I really didn't want to feel the feeling of dying again, so I must find a way to live." "Go on." "Then do you choose to be the running dog of the mysterious man?" Director Bowens asked seriously. "Then what else can I do? I just want to live. I don't want to die. But Potter and they have been pulling me on the front line with the Dark Lord several times. The Dark Lord has personally played for people on our side. The casualties were heavy and the well-trained Rers were vulnerable in the hands of the Dark Lord. So after 2 or 3 years of struggle, I found the Dark Lord and begged him not to kill me." "What did you do after surrendering to the mysterious man?" Amelia Burns asked. "I revealed a lot of valuable information within a year of surrendering to the Dark Lord, and he praised me." At this point, Peter's face showed a twisted smile. "Finally, when I told the Dark Lord the Potter's hiding place, he told me that I would get an unprecedented reward. For this reason, you killed so many people." Lupin shouted out of control. "There is no benefit in rejecting the Dark Lord, but as long as I obey him, I gain unprecedented strength. For example, the curse that exploded half a street. I just told him a few names and he gave me. Don't you know that the fight against the most evil devil in history is to save innocent lives, Peter? This is more important than power and life." Lupin looked calmer, and he used a hoarse voice speak to Peter. "You don't understand." Little dwarf Peter regained the calm tone that he had before. "He will kill me, Lupin. I just need to be alive. Not to mention that he gave me strength." "Okay, now the facts have been clarified." You reading books www.uukanzu.com. The director of Burns reached out to stop Lupin from saying anything. "I know you used to be friends, but now we still have important things to do." After that, she took the record from Percy and looked at it, and signed the name at the end. "You are Percy, right? This transcript is good." Percy's praise. Percy looked excited and smiled and nodded, almost throwing his glasses off. But Burns just said something in courtesy and then said to Professor Dumbledore, "Mr. Principal, the situation is now clear. The previous criminal acts were all committed by Peter, but he was stolen to Sirius. I would like to invite you to go to the Ministry of Magic with me to give a testimony to the rehabilitation of this case." "Of course. Of course. I'm glad to see an innocent person will get rid of the notoriety that was added to him." Dumbledore stood up after speaking. "I think we can pass by the fireplace in the office." Afterwards, Professor Dumbledore and Director Burns took Peter, who was sturdy, to the Ministry of Magic. Before he left, he told Ryan and Percy, "Thank you for your contribution to this matter, but this matter will not be made public until the Ministry of Magic has discussed it, so please temporarily keep it confidential." Both Ryan and Percy nodded quickly, agreeing that Dumbledore left after a burst of green flames. Everyone also left the office separately. At the door, Ryan met the Weasley family of 3. Arthur Weasley took the initiative to shake hands with Ryan and thanked, "Thank you so much this time. I heard Percy talk about your help this time. Our family owes you a favor." "No thanks. After all, your sons and I are friends." "Isn't it appropriate for friends to help each other?" Ryan said modestly.